not Mia and Vinny. Okay. Mia, are you comfortable sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So FYI, I'm going to turn off my screen and heads down for a second. I have to get something in so people can get paid in the next 4 minutes.
Me? Am I getting paid? Okay,
I'm afraid
so,
not. Sorry. It's for unrelated stuff. Actually, not related to this, but for other people. Sorry.
Okay, this is specifically for probably Quentin and Michelle. Aubrey, I don't know if you just want to stay on this or if you.
I thought you said that you had something with the marriage delay form that you wanted to talk about.
No, I think we covered that all in the stand-up, right?
Gotcha.
So the action point for you guys will be, we'll send you guys a, Quentin, could you possibly just generate that link for the affidavit of care, please? And then I'll at you guys in that thread. And then Quentin will put the interview link there. And if you could just please, with a fine-tooth comb, kind of what we did with your guys' form, and just tell Blake and Matt to do the same thing.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I'm going to tag you in there. Okay, thank you, Aubrey. Okay. So, right. So we were going through the test case template for Mia and Vinny's form. And we noticed a couple of things. I think the first thing we want to talk about is, which one do we want to talk about, guys? The two PDFs?
Yeah,
different?
sure. So when we do, I think it's from this screen, when we click on, yeah, this is the review screen. So you click on one of these and then, which I already have up there. Okay, so then you click on the PDF link down here. And then you go back and forth. Oh, just kidding. This one, between these two, there are like minor differences between the way the text appears and specifically the checkbox.
What do you think that, I can't, yeah, right?
Is one editable and one is not, by any chance?
Interesting.
They both look editable.
So, yeah, neither of them have been flattened, I don't think.
One was processed through the PDF concatenate function, which could sometimes change the PDF, I guess. Because if it's combining two, it would change it. But I wouldn't expect it to change one that...
I mean, it's not significant changes, but it is like
it's the check boxes which were frustrating because
you know those getting those right.
That's one point, but also it's concerning that this might be happening across the board. Like, as I said, Mia and Vinny have been like our guinea pigs because they're kind of going through everything first. So they're picking up a lot of these things. So this is the one, and I'm just not sure what the issue is here, if it's something we need to warn people about or...
That's definitely the source of the problem, and you confirmed it. It's because it's going through the PDF concatenate function. So the thing is, yeah, so if we let's go back to the tab of the actual interview.
Mm-hmm.
So when you click down here, I don't know if we really like this box, but it's what we have now for free, basically, without us having to do any engineering.
Which box?
This whole area of the screen with the this following document's been created for you, and then it has the title. If
y'all want, I can demo sometime an alternative for the attachment page, but you let me know.
That was actually something else we wanted to mention about, was that email this document link that collapses the email box.
Right. That whole area is built into DocAssemble. We're not stuck with it, but if we want that feature of emailing at any time, we would need to replicate this. So this is the original right here. And then the version up here is the one that's gone through PDF concatenate, which we don't need to do. I know my things are in the wrong place now.
Sorry, I moved it back.
It's okay. We need to add the cover page, so it's going to always go through this process up here, because that's going to still be combining two PDFs. So it's still going to be changed, and whatever is happening to make this thumbnail image is going to have the same thing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one I guess we should be trying to fix. If we're noticing differences we could ask upstream. We could ask Jonathan if he has any ideas, but I know he didn't write that code himself exactly. It's using like some library existing open source code that lets you manipulate PDFs. But there may be some options that are possible to change to make it look more the way we want it to be.
Yeah, so the first question was, is this an issue? I think that's the thing. I think MVP, I don't think so. I think it's just important to bear in mind that there's going to be two different ones.
Mhm.
And then the second thing is like, okay, after MVP, this is something we can play around with, right? Or is this
Yeah.
something, is this a showstopper?
I think it's something we can play around with. I think the big thing is, I mean, we do want to get rid of this box down here eventually. I mean, because it isn't the best UI, but we want to replace the functionality it has.
Right,
I
right.
think
That
that
was
was
another, sorry, Mia?
That was our next question, right, Maeve? Like, yeah.
It was, yeah. It's just not, okay, well, actually, maybe the overall thing is that, you know how initially we talked about this whole submitting to court thing and how it might confuse users. We're just
So-
concerned about this. Again,
So I'm working on alternative right now. Basically it has a page before that says, do you want to download the signed version or do you want to go straight to sending it to the court?
that's what we were thinking of doing, something like that with like a checkbox or
And I'm already setting it up. So yeah, you pick one or the other. And then if you pick download, then you go through the download screen where you can download the signed copy. If not, and then you go on to the sending of the form. And if not, you go straight to the questions for the cover sheet.
Would you be able to
Okay.
do both?
You can do both. If you
Okay.
download it, first of all, you can always download it later, which I say in the question, I say you'll be able to download it at the end if you want. But secondly, it says, you know, you can what happens is if you go to download it, you download it, and then there's the option to continue to sending information to the court. So it's already, you can already go straight through. Like, if you say to go ahead to just send it to the court, then you skip that screen, right? And you continue, and you can always download it at the end with the cover sheet. So maybe it would be easier to do a demo, but I don't have that ready yet, but I can do a demo.
But I think that's perfect that we know that you're working on this and that for now we've acknowledged that that we might need a possible alternative and that you're going to be working on that, Michelle.
Mhm.
Would you, on the first download, would you include a cover sheet, which would be slightly different? It tells you what you need to do to carry on. as you're
I think
designing.
that I'm just changing the interface. If we want to change kind of the content, then I think that's that's
Do you
not a
think we'd
question
always
for me,
envisioned the ability
right?
to put a cover sheet on for instructions when needed?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Sure.
thinking.
That is something we had talked about originally, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
That being
would be
said,
totally possible.
MVP, but
Right.
yes.
That's what yeah.
Well, I think
Gotcha.
we're a bit beyond the MVP for some of these, right?
I
We're
think
working
so.
on improving the
Yes,
process.
yes,
We
yes.
are, yeah.
But that's my point. I'm saying like the stuff you're working on doesn't need to hold up something. We really want it, and we
Yeah.
want to get it in as soon as possible. But it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
To hold
For
up.
now, this is fine, and I think that's what Mia and Vinny we were saying is that this is fine for now. We're not going to put a stopper on what we're doing, but it's just something that we wanted to bring up, and I thought that the management meeting was the right time because that was in my mind. It's for things that are kind of like a next level, not yeah, I don't know. I just thought that this might be a good time for.
And also to be clear, Michelle, I really like that workflow.
Thank you. I figured I wasn't going to pursue it at the time because I know it was MVP, but that's what I was thinking.
Okay,
We'll have to think
so
about
that's
how
good.
to
That's all that-
integrate it in a way that still works with multiple interviews is one challenge that I can see, which is not impossible to overcome. But
Just so you think.
I
the
mean, it's
benefit of
just-
the
it's
button
the
that we
same.
have is that it can execute out of order, and it won't
guess
require redoing the interview generator. That's all.
Maybe you and I should talk more about the details because I'm not sure what is. You mean the button that we have uses the need statement and that's what is useful, or then maybe we should talk about it in more detail because I'm not sure what you're describing. And not right now. Or I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
sure, we can do it right now, but
Sounds like a
whenever it is
plan.
we need to do it. Cool.
Okay, perfect. So that's all we needed from Mia and Vinny. Was there anything else you guys wanted, or just Vinny and Mia? Is there anything else that we wanted to raise? I'm looking at my notes now. I can't see.
There's definitely more for the management meeting. I think the question is whether
No,
or not.
yeah, no. No, I'm just saying
No, I
specifically
think that
for
was
Mia
all
and
for
Vinny.
us.
I
Okay,
think
perfect.
that was it.
Thank you for staying on, guys. Mia, I'm gonna send you I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
tag you
guys.
in the doodle. Bye.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Management time. Sorry about that. Okay.
Management time.
54 minutes to go. Let's go.
All right, I'm
Um,
gonna paste this alternative attachment form in the channel. So
The first thing that I wanted to talk about was what David raised in the admin channel. And David, if I could just hand over to you to try and
Yeah,
communicate that.
mostly I just want to make sure we don't get stuck in perpetual private beta with the 209A. I mean, I think that it's great that now, and we're getting expanded usage and uptick and people who are using it to, advocates who are using it to help. But I think we sort of reach a natural limit where we're really not helping as many people as we can until we actually get it out to the public. And so I just want to think about how we're going to get from where we are now to a public release. The one hiccup or consideration is that obviously the reason why we were doing this private beta in the first place was because of court politics and whatnot. And I think that the way that I think most maximizes, so the problem is that a form like this, as opposed to the TRO, has to be internally approved by all the court departments who accept it, if it's going to be something that we send to them, which means that you've got, 5 different people who can say no.
Yeah.
And of course, they don't all do things the same. That's if we're going to take it and send it to them. There is not the same requirement if we just make a public release where we have something that's not sent directly to the court, but it says, hey, here's your thing, fill it out, then call the court, and then either email it or whatever they tell you to do with it. Then it doesn't trigger under the MOU the same requirement for all of those parties to say yay. And in speaking with my court contact, I was led to believe that if we were to produce something that did that, as opposed to email directly, that the court would likely link directly to it from their website, which is, as we know, a big traffic driver. And that might not be the final place where we want to end up. And I think that over time, natural pressure of other people being involved would, and seeing the utility would maybe move towards a situation where we could get through that logjam. But in the age-old fight, learn to fight your battles. My suggestion is that we think about a strategy that gets us to a ready to share with people, such that they have it, save it, email it, download it, whatever, and then call the court capacity. And so my question is just, what do we think we need to do to get there? And that was, I'll stop yammering.
So
okay.
just to say what my thought was when David asked me about that was, I think that we are now at a point where we're really close to being able to release that. We want to just do more finality to make sure that there's no showstopper bugs that are out there. So I think that the real question is, I think we'll keep up the same pace, which has been slow and steady for updates, that as we have time to work on them, they're now like the polishing stage. They're going to keep coming. It's a backlog that's not anything that will stop someone from using the form.
And this is I'm sorry, timing's so hard.
Oh, it's okay.
Continue.
But what we want is a testing plan, so we feel comfortable that we've caught, like maybe 95% of the bugs that someone might run into in real life. I think we're not going to be able to catch all of them, but we want something that will be close enough that we feel comfortable that it's better. Someone won't go through an hour-long process and then have it not work. That's what we really want.
That's
And then just make sure, I think the thing is what's really important on this, because it's so long, is in the instructions to the user is make sure that they read it and that it's right. So I'm just wondering, the whole testing thing is because if it's not right, they don't have a way to correct it. our regular users, not our DV advocates. They don't have a way to, like, for example, I can't remember, Jody, I asked you something, it was like 9 million permutations of something to test last Friday. But I think that those are, I just can't remember what topic it was, but it was the kind of thing is it's really important that the right boxes get checked. And I don't remember.
And then the affidavit, making sure that everything from the affidavit lands on the, like the statement, making sure the statement is fully populating in the.
There was something where there was a dictionary, and I can't remember what it was, but I don't remember what it was, but we can go check it. But I guess what I'm saying is there was an instance where it wasn't, I know it'll still go through the testing, but there was an instance where these boxes weren't getting checked, and we should put in our instructions, make sure you read it and it's correct. Now, what I'm not sure of is if it's not correct, what can they do? Because we know the DV advocates can do something, but we're not planning on releasing an editable PDF to our users. So that's one sticky point, because of course they can't check it with a pen and then take a picture of it, you know, so that might be something just to think, or we just test the heck out of it so we're quite sure that isn't going to happen.
I think we also need to test the heck out of it.
How are we going to test it? How?
That is the question.
So part of the issue, I think that's part of what we've been trying to set up with the testing team, right? Like we have the scenarios for some of the sections that Kate already set up previously.
But they're probably things have changed so much with the 209A. They probably are totally obsolete by now.
I don't think they're obsolete. I think the basis is still there. Those things still need to be tested. So it's just a case of editing what you've already. I don't think we trash that. I think we take what you have and just edit it,
update it.
And And I think it's coming up with enough test scenarios where, you know, again, we go in with the mentality of let's try to break it. And so it's not just, I remember what you're talking about now, Caroline, that was a few weeks ago with the, based on the type of, you know, fear, or like, was I hurt? Was I sexually abused? Was I just in fear of being abused? If I checked just like made me feel scared, it didn't populate. Right. But if I checked made me feel scared and did something else, then it populated. So we need to check that each corresponding box in the interview populates the right one on the form, but then we also have to check combinations and things like that. And so I think if there's a way to break it down so that we can, you know, maybe we have some people test just that one piece, we can assign, you know, just test the crap out of this one piece and check every combination, and you know, maybe we can break it up that way.
That's how the testing scenarios work, right? Like we have scenarios that concentrate on those types of things. We make the shortest path, right? I don't know if you've had a look at kind of what the testing stuff looks like.
We went through some of them on Thursday, I think it was, but.
Oh, cool. Okay. So like it tries to cover those kinds of combinatorial issues. It tries to cover all the edge cases, if possible, if desired, right?
Are we done making changes then that aren't like responsive to, like, aren't responsive to like feedback and issues?
Yeah, so I think I've got one little teeny language thing that's outstanding. I mean, it's done. I just have to push it to get.
But no more like flow changes.
No. The only thing is, this is what I was saying. The thing I sent Jody, and maybe Jody, you didn't see it. It was actually in the affidavit of care, and it's not a showstopper. It's an MVP. So that if you answer certain questions in the affidavit of care, you shouldn't get asked other questions. That's not an MVP because you can always answer the questions twice, which is a pain in the ass. But that's not.
But it works.
As long as one isn't contradicting the other, you know.
Right.
I think we're okay for that. And
that I also, sorry, I interrupted you. That can go something. Sorry.
I would say that can probably go through your testing system. And whether it works or whether it doesn't work, as long as they don't contradict each other.
Yeah. And it's important to realize on a paper form, someone could contradict each other. So
exactly.
You always think back to the better than.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah.
So there are two other things. One is I think overflow needs to be tested so that because I still don't understand, if so there are some fields that it's really important that we see all the information. Do the other fields not, are they not as, like, if the person puts in information and it's not on the form, or is that bad? Are we in trouble? Are they, what's the situation there? So figuring out minimum characters for the fields that we're not going to have addenda for, and then having addenda for the fields that do need addenda, and like that understanding of, like, I just want a basic understanding of if it's like okay for the form not to include information that they put on in their interview.
Did you ever get in touch with that SME that I said volunteered to work on that?
I'm sorry, I'm not good at emails, but I'll try and dig that up again. But this is a general question, like about forms in general, and then sure, for the 209A, like, is it just the defendant information, which I have, Kate gave me an email that I can contact someone about too.
She is on Slack, but I doubt she's checking it.
Okay. Well, I could email her and tell her to check Slack maybe, and that might work. Both of us.
Here's my really big picture thought about it, which maybe, David, you have different thoughts, or other people on the call who practice in court have. I think, well, so on this form, we have like probably just the affidavit of care and custody is like over 100 variables. And then we have probably on the order of 300 to 400 total variables. So it starts to seem a really daunting project to go through and figure out character limits for each field that may be or may not be very likely to have overflow issues.
Yeah, but we can do very.
Hold on. Let me just finish. Sorry. I haven't set the stage yet.
Okay, but
I'm trying to give you the context you asked for, but it's hard if you interrupt. So that's the backdrop of this, right? Like, how much can we do and how much time can we spend on that problem, given the real risks? So I think the risk is, one, someone doesn't catch it if they submit something that's too long and they don't know that it's too long. We have some cues on screen. If there's room for a free text field, we're definitely always and there's more than one row of input, we're always sending that to an appendix. I think we've caught all of those area fields. If people have very long names, they're probably used to web forms sometimes not dealing with their names, for example, but they may not know if there's no limit on the field, and that might cause issues. So the question is, well, what's the harm that's caused by that? I think the answer is there should be some visual cue when someone receives the form that there's an error, because it's going to be partially cut off character.
And that,
it's not a guarantee, but it's a reality that the clerk will probably see that at some point. And the question is, like, what are the checks that the person who's filling out the form has to be able to know that that's going on? So one is just the cues on the screen. Second is they get to see all the output at 3 stages before they submit it to the court. So I think it's a problem we have to figure out ways to fix, but spend the right amount of time on it, so it's doesn't become its own project that dominates the value that the client gets. Isn't like that they have, they wanted to put in 30 fields and it should have warned them because there's only room for 28. We have to just be proportionate about it, I think.
Sure. So one of my questions is, by variables, did you mean fields? Like there are 300 fields? Because we can make it a practice to put minimum field, like maximum field length requirements, maximum character requirements, which I think DocAssemble has built in, right? We don't have to mess with variables. So that's kind of fields.
I'm really confused by that, but I think your point is that we can put limits on every input. Is that what you're saying?
Well, one, for moving forward, we can try and say people who are writing forms need to assess the maximum number of characters that we guesstimate can go in a field, and then put a maximum character limit on those input fields, which DocAssemble does have. And we can go through and start doing that for the 209A, but as far as the 209A goes, I'm not saying we need to fill everything in. I'm saying, which things do we need to fill in? Have we decided which ones do need to be completely seen or completely communicated, whichever it is, whatever, minimum character length, overflow, I don't care, addenda, whatever way overflow is handled. Just which ones need to be handled, which ones is it okay that we don't handle, I'm not looking for justifications. I just want to know which ones they are.
Can I
Jody?
comment? So I
Yeah.
have a thought. There were some that I was able to catch just through my, 7-8 times I've tested the whole thing now. So what I would say is, what if I kind of go through and I can spend some time, I could do that this week and just play with the fields, figure out which ones are cutting off. 2 I can think of off the top of my head to give you an example. Like one is hair. You select the hair color from the thing, right? And then it says any other comments about hair, and it does the same with eyes for the defendant, And if you put like thick hair but short, like it does cut it off. So it'll put the color first that you check, and then it'll cut it off.
It'll also say other at the beginning of it if you chose other, which basically takes up almost all the text.
So what we can do is we can kind of put, and then the other thing I noticed was, are there any people that you want to share this information with? I put my lawyer, and then I put return, and then it returned, and then I put my friend. And when it showed up on the form, it did show up with the return, but it put a space in between. So then the second one like kind of ran off the form a little. So maybe for things like that, we just make it so that they can't, I don't know if there's a way to make it so they can't return, but then it just will keep, force them to keep typing on one line. Things like that. I can play around with some of the fields and see if we can try to figure out some of those character lengths. To your point, Quentin, I think we need to pick our battles. I don't think we necessarily have time to go through all, 300, but, for some of them that are more important, I think we can do that.
I think that's basically what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah.
let's identify which fields, right?
Right,
I
so-
feel like words are being put in my mouth because I keep saying that I don't care.
Michelle, I'm trying to define the parameter of the problem. It's not about what you said or what anyone said.
I think we're all saying
trying
the
to
same
collectively reach
Yeah.
a description
I
of
think
the
we're all
problem.
saying the same thing.
I mean,
have
it
the
could
right
be,
approach.
instead of looking at the variables, is you just have the paper in front of you and you look at everything and you say, like, you could even take a red pen, take the form, the paper forms, and you just circle every place that text goes in, and you say, if this doesn't have an addendum,
Limit.
then you need one because it's important. An example, I don't know, would be something like weapons. Once somebody has weapons, maybe it doesn't matter if they have a 1932, label Rockefeller double loading something or other. They've got a gun. Maybe it doesn't matter that you have an addendum for that. But whereas some of the other stuff does matter, like the affidavit, that matters. So it sounds to me, Michelle, that's what you're looking for. It's just somebody to say, okay, where are we really going to be in trouble if they don't have an addendum, and where do they need addenda? That's just, and specifically for 209A.
Yeah.
And
So
we've got
like a
some
good-
people available. We've got Jody, and we've got a couple of people who are available this afternoon who can take that on.
Right.
Um,
And then just the
Well,
other thing about what Jody
hold on.
said is
One-
the return. There is a gap. I mean, it's not like a new line. There's a line, and then there's this. It's almost like more space than there is text. And I'm wondering if in the addendum we can figure out how to do an addendum so you just have a new line and not an inch in between line 1 and line 2.
I think there probably is like a way for us to take out any place someone puts in an extra
Charge.
blank line and delete those.
Or
Or
just-
maybe in general, for any field
Right.
that's going to fit on the first part of the PDF, just take out the new lines, because maybe
Or
there's
is
no
this,
reason to have new ones.
may also be a line spacing issue in the PDF.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it
That's
is,
true.
but I noticed
I'm
that.
not sure we can control that, unfortunately.
Yeah, we might not be able to,
Oh,
but we can always, yeah, we can just take out special
Switching out the
characters.
lines.
okay.
But yeah, that's
So who is like a subject matter expert on the legal side that can go through and identify, to your point, Caroline, like weapons, it's not important, like how much, we create an addendum, like who can identify like what are
That
the
was-
most important?
That was Emma, who I gave
who
the
did that?
contact information for. I think she's going to need a little guidance, but she does a lot of 209As, and she can do that.
Okay.
She'll
What
need
kind
some
of guidance
guidance.
does she need?
Like I just said I gave her a very brief description of the problem, but
Okay.
I think you'll need to explain to her exactly what you're looking for.
If someone wants to send me her contact info, I can reach out to her and just
Okay.
kind of let her know what the problem
That
is and what
sounds
we're trying
great.
to, and then I can help test it.
The key thing is use your lawyer whispering skills to make sure that it's clear that the answer can't be everything.
Well, maybe it can be if we have to put limits on everything. It's like, okay, we'll just do it. But
Yeah.
remember, you know, we
Much
want
better
to
email.
not make things a lot worse for people who are on paper. There's like, you can write in the margins and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
so we do want to be mindful of that. We're not trying to offer a worse experience.
And then as for the carriage return, depending on whether or not DocAssemble displays a standard text area, you should be able to control soft returns, right? So I think, I don't know if that's something you might be configurable.
I think we might have to pre-process it in the output. So we might like come up with a standard function that just takes out all the carriage returns and whatever other stuff we do. Like for that list of people you want to view the form, I'm thinking that should be turned into a comma separated list no matter how they enter it.
Yeah, because when I did return, it looked like in the interview field on the thing when I was filling it out, it looked like they were right, like single space right on top, you know, stacked. But then in the form, it was like,
That's what I had too. That's exactly what I had.
Yeah, but that's a line spacing.
Along these same lines, whether this is an MVP issue or not, we talked about, at least Quentin and Kate and I talked about what happens if the abuser and a child have the same name. And I don't know that we brought it up. I don't know that we answered it, and I don't know if we need the answer for the MVP or not. That's just
Well,
Do we ask for suffix?
Well, I think we do ask for suffix, but also I think, Caroline, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't go through and change all of the children's names to first name only yet, did we? Or did we do that? I can't remember.
So remember, I made a GitHub issue. I made a GitHub issue a while ago because I had gone through the whole interview using the other side and the child, and I think the original party all having the same name, and to see what was ambiguous. And I tried to flag where I saw ambiguity.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Is that what I'm not sure of is if we want this to be part of the MVP, you know, do we need to solve this for the MVP or not? And if we do, then that's something we need to get back to. And I didn't, Quentin, I don't remember the child first name. I remember that in a different context, not this context.
Are we capturing these as questions?
It's in GitHub. The whole thing's in GitHub. It's just that we don't.
It's already made an issue.
It is a good question. These are all issues, but should we make milestones for these issues maybe? And make one of these be the milestone for like release?
Yeah.
Well, I think to Caroline's point, we have to figure out what are showstoppers for the MVP and what are like, you know, things to keep working on past that.
Right. And maybe someone needs to go through the issues and see if anything's been captured there that we consider showstoppers.
If Emma's an expert.
That's where I was on Friday. That's why I'm so far behind. I just went through there were like 44 issues, I think. And I went through them, mostly just looking for, is there stuff that I haven't done that I need to do? But that was one of them. I thought, well, where are we? Where does we land with that?
I mean, I've generally tried to flag anything I thought was a showstopper as a showstopper, and I'll look again. I think the only thing that I can particularly think of is that impoundment stuff. I do think is essential.
Yeah. Did you merge that, Quentin? Did you merge that branch?
The one that you submitted like on Thursday? I merged that.
Okay, so Kate, that should be in there. It's not perfect, but it's not inaccurate.
Yeah, I can look through again and see if anything else jumps out as really essential. There's nothing else I can think of right now though.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying about this child parent same name thing is it's not I don't think it's a showstopper.
I don't think it is either. Like I went through the whole interview specifically like doing everyone with the same names, and there was nothing that I was like, oh my God, this is gonna.
No, it was a little weird, but it was, I mean, and the thing is, like, we know that this is going to be, it's going to be confusing. And then also, if they put the two names in the affidavit, they're going to have to identify who's who. And defendant information, we ask about, it's pretty clear when we're asking, you know, how tall is so-and-so and where do they live and how do you, we're not asking about the child, right? We explain that it's for service. So I think, it may be weird, but I think we don't need it for MVP.
And presumably people who live in that situation would be used to that ambiguity.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the person filling it out is not going to be confused at all. They're going to know. It's
Like
just more
little
so on the
Johnny or
court
something.
side.
Like who has
So
a gun, right?
would it
Like,
be
Yeah, yeah.
would it be hard to flag, like, since we do have the suffixes in there, like the suffix field, would it be hard to flag, like, when it
Or just
when,
use full
when
names instead
it's
of first
completed,
names.
or when
I
it's
wouldn't
completed,
assume that
like
there's a different
if there's
suffix.
No,
Yeah,
me
yeah.
neither.
it says,
Yeah.
I mean, what you could do is
could
add
still use
another
that
Well,
field
information
in
to
name for
disambiguate a little.
nickname. You know what I mean?
What about a
what I'm saying is,
parenthetical
like,
that said,
say,
I mean, this is a little hacky just because it's
Caroline
so
hates
particular.
parentheses.
Well, I was going to say, what if
I
you
don't
did a
like
simple, what if you did a
parenthetical
simple check to see
conversations.
if the first names were the same? And if the first names are the same, you always added a parenthetical for the child that said child.
Yeah,
Or
somebody
that,
came
you
up
have to
with
write a
that.
new
That
function
was,
for it, but
that was
well,
in
what
a,
if you did this? Could you flag it to check before it generates the thing? Could you flag it to do a check if two names are identical for like parent child and they have not used the suffix field? Could you give them like a, hey, flag, like we noticed that the parent and the child's name is the same.
yeah.
Can you please go back and do the suffix?
we've
As I'm
done,
thinking
and
about
we-
it, we could
has a
do anything,
suffix.
right? The question
yeah,
is, what
and
should
those
we
are,
do?
all these
Um,
solutions are in the GitHub issues. I mean,
Okay.
I think what I'm saying is if it's not an MVP, then when we go back, we can figure
Yeah.
out how we want to do it.
I think Caroline,
Should I
Yeah.
make this a post MVP? It seems okay.
I think
to
this is
make- I'm
post
starting
MVP, I
to
think.
start tagging.
I also,
some
the thing
if
is, I'm thinking,
necessary.
how often,
Yeah.
I don't have much experience with this, but how often is this going to be an issue? Is this worth us
Quite
spending
fairly
that much
often.
time on?
Yeah, it's pretty
Really?
often.
This is yeah. I mean, son named after father.
all the time.
But the
Yeah.
ambiguity won't necessarily be an issue because we don't think there's much ambiguity. So it might
It
come up
won't be
often.
an issue with the person filling it out, but will it be an issue with the court
But
when
on the
they read
form,
it?
it will be
We
clearly.
probably can't really capture it on the form in
Yeah.
a way that's different from what it's done now.
Okay.
We can't really disambiguate on the form, I think.
But on
Well,
the
Then I
form, it'll
think
say
we move on and
defendant.
we don't
On
worry
the
about
form, it
this right
doesn't
now.
matter.
Def-
I mean,
There's
you
usually
got one
context
form
on the
for
form.
children and you got one form for defendant information.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if they have the
The
same name.
context, yeah, the context will indicate who it
This
is.
feels post MVP.
Yeah.
Do we
Perfect, so we
have
can
do
move
we
on.
have a no one feels uncomfortable with that?
Yeah, but I'll look
So-
through GitHub again and see if there are other showstopper
Okay.
issues. And I don't think there
And-
are really.
And I think if we get people testing, especially if we have some people who actually have, dedicated time, like students, and then
Yep.
we can do a heck of a lot of testing. I think the filler will help. I know everybody has resistance to the filler. I think nobody that hasn't gone through the filler with me at some point doesn't quite understand what the filler is. And it's quite frustrating when people assume, because I haven't gotten one person who understands what it is until I do it with them, and afterwards there is an understanding. So
I think, Michelle, with the filler, the only thing that I found difficult that made it, everything about it was easier, except for when I went to check the form against what I had input. Because when you're inputting it yourself, you tend to remember better. But when the filler did it for me, then it was harder for me to check the PDF against what I had entered because the filler did it for me. That's the only thing that made it more difficult.
Do you want me to make a page or something?
Oh, that
like
would
a
be
PDF that just
pre-filled.
has
Yeah,
all
an
the
example.
information?
That would make sense.
That would help.
Like I could do
Yeah.
that. But
'Cause
like
then
you
it
can
would be
click
easier if it
into a
says
new
new
tab
spot.
and you'll have at the end.
I mean, the other thing that's good about that is then you can figure out whether it might have been the filler that made the error or whether the YAML made the error. Because that's
Yeah,
what yeah.
the thing about the filler, and this is another, we can sit down and I think I should go through this with you, with Caroline, because all the filler does is it pre-fills some of the fields that you're going to see on the page. It doesn't skip anything. It doesn't hide anything. If I said, the defendant speaks a different language and it's Farsi, but you say they don't speak a different language, then that Farsi won't show up. Like it's as if you entered the information. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. No, I understand the principle. It's just that when I
Okay.
did it, it didn't do what I expected. So
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But anyway, sorry. But I think it will help speed up the process. If people don't want to do it, then that's fine. And you can tell me. If you do want to do it, then there are other things I can do to ease the process even more. But Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's too confusing for maybe the explanation that will be necessary will take too much time. I don't know.
I don't think that's the issue, Michelle.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
So
I-
how are we going to test it? How are we going to use
So
the
un-
scenario? Are we going to update the scenarios and then?
Yeah,
Here's-
I think we
here's what
just update
I
the
was-
scenarios.
As a developer, what I was thinking, and this might not be possible, but
Mhm.
I think we need some tests that pass fail that we can run. And I'm not saying just once, but like maybe we choose 4 most important scenarios that we can run with Allo or Selenium or whatever we choose, so that when
I could also write some
submit
some
something,
Selenium, yeah.
will be able to tell me if it errors or not. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest showstopper for me, is if I make a change that I think is relatively fine, but I have to take 20 minutes to test it. That's how you get bugs in production, because I want to skip the 20 minutes. I mean, that's not going to happen if we're doing real production, but in our current test, like there was a bug that got in because, it took so long to get through. I missed one of the scenarios. I can't, you can't do 40 minutes at every change manually.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, the crew at Code for Boston, we're getting pretty close to a place where you're going to be able to push a branch and have a set of automated tests run on your code. So
For a Dockassemble?
with the pushing of a branch with Dockassemble, it's kind of going almost around Dockassemble. It'll need its own account. It'll need its own account on Dockassemble, on the server that's on Dockassemble.
Yeah.
On the Suffolk, on Dockassemble or on the Suffolk server?
On
That's the
the
same.
Suffolk Dockassemble server.
I got you right, yeah.
But it will be able to make a project and then use Allo or Puppeteer to test that project, and we'll see if it makes the same project each time or a new project each time. We'll see how difficult it gets. So
I was gonna bring up, David, in your Slack thing from last week, you asked about you talked about the not fully submitting the form, but like they like it to be a phone call. And I think what you proposed is great. The only thought that I had is there is such a huge list of courts. Is it the same for every single one of those, no matter what court people pick? Is it generally like all courts in Massachusetts, like a phone call versus a email?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd want to be standard, so we want to do the phone call. Now, the nice thing is, here's where we should use the court selector, and then also, I think, if I remember correctly, Quentin, you have phone numbers for the courts on file. So we should be able to
data set, whether or not we use the court selector.
Whether or not we use the court selector, we should then be able to
automate
say.
the calling?
I don't think that.
I think they want to automate.
I don't think we need to do that.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. What are we
I
talking about
liked
the
your
phone call?
idea. Go ahead, Maeve, sorry.
I'm a bit confused. What are we talking about with the phone call?
So instead of at the end saying click to send to the court, it will say you finished this, save it or email it to yourself and then call the court at this number, and then give them the number of that specific, the court they have chosen. Give them that number.
Okay, thank you.
Because we're thinking that they're not going to respond well. This is more of a, human habit. We're accommodating, we're trying to get the best result based on the limitations of human habit. And so I think, to your point, that's the best thing to do. Make it a phone call, and then eventually, like you said, I think exactly what you said is going to happen, David. They'll be like, why are we still doing phone calls? Why don't people just submit it? And then that will fix that problem.
Oh, we can hope.
The court can't deal with just emails.
No. So I think that's a great idea.
Right. They're saying they're not going to, is it after August 18th?
Well, that's the housing court, right?
Just the housing court, yeah.
That's because of the moratorium is why that date's significant.
Right. And
and that's because the housing court's one of the few courts who has publicly said that right now they will take emails. Not all of the courts have actually said that they will take emails. Our MOU allows us to send emails directly.
Okay. Well, is there any harm in having it submit? Is there any harm in having it submit and then give them the phone number and tell them to call?
Yes, there is harm because we
cannot
submit to them until they have approved.
Okay.
the interview.
Okay.
So
And also-
although this is different than say like the housing court. So the housing court, like right now, anyone can send them an email and it files. We are restricted by the MOU to only sending them an email for forms that we have gotten approved.
Right.
But the district courts, BMCs, and probate courts do all have emails.
Yeah.
Everyone
That
has
they're-
emails.
But they don't.
I mean, I can personally testify that the courts lose
This is
lose
why I know.
everything you send.
Yeah.
But
So this is the thing. Individual courts have gone and said, "Oh, email this," and sometimes they do it like on a case-by-case basis. They'll tell these attorneys, "You guys, here's the secret lowdown. Email me." The clerk will say something
Clerk
like that.
124 at.
And
But-
also, wasn't it last Thursday, the probate and family court standing order says the only people who can email the court are volunteer lawyers and somebody else. Two people,
pro bono.
court service centers and volunteer lawyers working for legal aid programs. Because Katie mentioned that to me today, and I said, "Well, there's a special contract with
Yes,
Mass."
there's an MOU with the court. So I mean.
But I guess the thing is, Kate, is that they can't, right? So if we make this public, unless the courts approve the
Yeah.
209A that we submit, and the 5 people.
Let me
go
ask.
through it, our people can't email them directly. I mean, of course, we want them to go to district court anyway. So.
Well, is it that they can't email? I just
They
want to get
cannot through our
clarification.
system
Is it-
email, and it is not clear on a court-by-court basis whether or not they can email in other courts.
Okay,
Except
for
so
probate
it's not
and family, they say
whether or
you
not the
can't, right?
email constitutes a filing. It's the fact that people just can't email the court. Period.
Well,
see
no,
what you're
people can email the court.
So
Whether or
what
not
if
it's
what if we just let it submit, but not? We don't.
no, well,
like,
we can't submit. We can't
Can't
send.
come from us.
Okay.
We can't send something from our email. Our MOU
And we
says
don't
we
wanna-
cannot send.
And we don't
Okay.
want to advise people to email the court when we know, I mean, with a probate
We
and
know
family
that
court,
it'll get
we're
lost.
not accepting, we're only accepting emails from these people. We don't want to advise
Yeah.
people to email their
Okay.
form.
Yeah, per se.
right, and I think there's
especially.
a safety issue in having people think that
Very much.
they may have submitted their
If they have
application when
submitted
they
it,
haven't.
yep, that's a good
And,
point.
and to be frank, that's where I think the courts are coming from with all of this here, and why they like the idea of a call is they want to know there's someone live right there to address
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Now,
And the nice thing about
Yeah.
the download too is if it's after hours, they can take it to a police station, which
Yeah.
I think is nice.
It's
This
already
works.
right, and we should advise
Okay.
that.
And
We
do
should
they
make
know
that-
Include
that?
information.
Is
then.
that, yeah, is
somewhere.
that,
No,
should make
we're-
that
You should
information
actually
clear.
add something into the instructions if it's after
Yeah.
4:30. Take this to your
Right.
local police.
Do we
I'll put
have
an
a
issue on that
instructions
right now.
for 209A yet?
We don't have any instructions for the 209A.
That's what I
but
thought.
Yeah, you're right.
So we need to work on that.
So I'm going to just
Okay.
make that the issue. Create an instruction sheet. That really is an MVP thing if it's going to be
Yeah,
posted.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is
Yeah,
it
I
different
think-
from the
I
cover
think-
sheet the court already had? Because that was an issue that we have open. I think it's a different question.
It's a different issue because the court is not going to get, it's going to be
This-
completely different. Yeah.
this is client facing.
I think that should be provided with the like downloadable
Yes.
Yeah.
sign
Yeah.
Yes, it should.
That's what we're
and
talking about.
document.
When we
Oh,
say
okay.
cover page. Yeah,
Yeah.
not to go into the
Okay.
court, but for the person who downloads it.
Right.
Okay.
And
But
that
the
is going to be a little
This
engineering
was
thing to
an
figure out how to
issue.
make those
I'm
different.
sorry, but Quentin, I thought you said that we were going to put emails and phone numbers on the cover sheet that went to the court, but I thought that Kate.
We are.
Okay, because I thought Kate said that we don't want to do that. So I was.
Don't
I
wanna
don't
put
think we want to
address.
for a 209A.
Yeah.
Oh, we
See,
don't
Yeah,
want
that's
not
what I
addresses.
thought.
We put contact.
Okay.
Whatever they said was the contact.
Right.
But
I think
we
the
don't
one
have to
But that
worry
is
about
far
that
away
right
and-
now because
Yeah.
we're not sending it to the court.
Yeah.
We won't get
The
the cover
one
page.
place the contact info should appear on the 209A is the plaintiff confidential info form
Okay.
and nowhere else.
Yeah.
Because that
But
has
again,
special
not
procedures.
an
They
issue
put it in
now.
a sealed envelope.
So maybe on
Yeah.
the cover sheet say, look at the plaintiff confidential information.
Yeah.
form.
Except that we're not sending I mean, we can think about what the cover sheet will look like, but
Yeah.
I see what you're
Provide-
saying,
Well,
though,
we-
Caroline. We might want to have a cover sheet that explains what it is the person's emailing. If the clerk says, go ahead and email it to me. Is that your point?
mm.
For people who had permission to email it to the clerk?
So they call up the clerk says, email it to me.
right.
Which I think
Is
is
there
what
something
they'll
that we want
say.
to say?
Yeah, I think that's what's
But
going to
if
happen.
So we haven't quite decided, I mean, we're sort of talking about hypothetical because we haven't really decided whether we're going to try and get the 5-person approval and submit through Mass Access and get a link from the court website, or whether we're going to tell
So
people to download it.
Let me clarify. I think it's very likely we can get a link from the court's website without getting the 5-person approval.
Oh.
If the form simply says, call your court.
Mm.
If the form, the cover,
Well, if we don't submit automatically, if we say, save this and call the court, then I think there's a high likelihood that we can get the link. And then I see that as a temporary situation until maybe people think better of it.
Okay.
And if it's not a temporary situation, it's still a very good situation.
So your proposal is to skip the 5-person approval, or just go ahead and publish and wait for the
proposal is not to put ourselves in a position where we are stuck waiting for a 5-person approval.
Okay. All right. So we just go ahead and do it regularly, and then and submit as well, but just keep going with.
Well, we won't submit. So here, I'll lay it all out. So it's sort of a phased approach, right? So the first phase is we create a packet which we would be happy releasing publicly for anyone to use without having the court have to say anything, which is to say, here it is, it's all together, now call your court.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, when we have that product, we can contact the court. And based upon my conversations with my court contact, I believe there's a strong likelihood the court will link to that.
I see, gotcha, okay.
Then, after that happens, assuming there is success with things working, then we can broach the issue of, we could.
By the way.
Connect it. Now, it's not that they don't know that that's the case. It's that there are multiple parties within the court who have different priorities, and that right now, those individuals who would not want there to be a direct filing have an effective veto if we go the route of having the official court approval. So the worst case scenario is we create a packet, we put it out on the public, it's not on the court's website, but we can share it widely and people can use it and then they can call the court. Second best case scenario is we put that out and then the court links to it. And then best scenario is after a while, people realize, oh, it would be nice if they could just send it directly to the court, and then we send it directly to the court.
Gotcha.
But the idea is not to get stuck on trying to do the submit
and
thing.
And once they see the value proposition, then they might.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's the MAID
people
model,
who will never.
Right?
What the rule? The MAID rule?
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, right.
I think that's good. I think that's a good rule.
Love
and I think
that
rule.
When I have the energy, that's basically what I do with most of life. But
so
with consent, obviously.
I just want to go back to the testing situation, because is this a call that we're going to have? Lance has done every single.
Here's a suggestion that I have, which is, because you all are working on a really good strategy for doing comprehensive testing. I think we also need a strategy to speed up development, which it sounds like we're really far from having the automated test. So I want to talk about that, and then I want to think about whether there's a timeline that we can talk about. So, but first, my suggestion is I can reach out to Jonathan Pyle, who has done lots of Allo testing, and ask him if he would be willing to build us 4 automated tests if we figure out what those scenarios are. And if so, if that timeline would be enough to help us speed up development. We don't set aside the manual tests, because I think there's a lot we're learning from the manual test that we could never do in the automated testing, but that will help us get closer to our confidence about release.
The thing that we've kind of got is that we've got the simple to automate forms testing. That's good. We've got this going. It's the more complex ones that are stitched together that we're going to have problems with, like the 2098. And I don't know, that might be something that we want to help with. Yeah, Michelle?
Probably like 100 permutations, right? I mean, it's really hard to do.
But the simple to automate ones were good. And the thing that I'm realizing is that as teams write their scenarios, they run through the tests and they realize they're bugs, and then they fix the bugs. So by the time that they get the scenarios and write the test is actually passing because they've done all the testing when they were writing the scenarios and the test cases. So, yeah. Yes, Michelle?
So one thing is I'd like to make a note somewhere that about getting minimum values for the fields, kind of when it's being developed. Maximum values, sorry. The other thing is, if you have scenarios that you want turned into allo tests, that's probably something I can do, or something Neha or Barrett can do if Jonathan can't. Jonathan will do it a lot faster. But if it's something that he can't do, then we just haven't had any scenarios that from anybody that are like, you know, this is something that's supposed to remain steady, right? This is a path that's supposed to remain consistent at this point. So
Okay.
I think that's totally feasible, 3 or 4, or, you know, whatever number of tests, as long as the paths stay consistent and will be useful, right? Or that the person testing, you know, or that there's someone that can update the tests when they need to when the flow needs to change or something, like it's an allo test. If John can do it, he can do it a lot faster. Jonathan, sorry. If Jonathan can do it, he can do it a lot faster. If not, we still have people who know how to write allo tests.
Well, that brings me to the next question, which is timeline. So
Yeah.
it would be great to have an aggressive release timeline based on what we said, without going crazy and without sabotaging the progress we're making on some of these simple to automate forms that I think we can keep a pretty steady progress of delivering to the court, so they can approve them and they get in the habit of getting content from us that they approve, and especially that we get a fair volume of forms up at this early. I mean, who knows what the next part of the emergency will be like, but we do know that we're kind of coming to an end of the first phase of the court's closing. So yeah, what do people think? I mean, I can see the open issues that are things I would do, and I'm thinking like 2 weeks is reasonable, especially if we have a way to speed up and make a commit. I can see if it works.
Quentin, when you say 2 weeks is reasonable, are we thinking about sort of one page? I think when you're talking about time, you need to connect it with the length of the form. So if you have a 4-page form, that would take longer to develop and get to where you want, rather than a 1-page form. Is that right?
Not for, I'm specifically talking about the 209A though.
Yeah, so we're talking about just it.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be too hard to say like generally how long it will take.
Oh, so you're saying 2 weeks for us to get 2 weeks from now to get it done.
Is that possible? And then what would it take to get there without people putting in overtime? Because that's not the goal.
We don't want anyone.
Let's make the schedule work so that people just have a regular week and don't have to prioritize this above their life.
And I do want to underline for folks that the 209A form is a super important form that is not going to just stay at minimum viable product. So as we continue to get feedback, it will keep coming in and we'll do regular updates. Some of the other forms, they might languish for a while until there's an issue big enough to warrant going back in. But the 209A, I imagine, is always going to be.
Well, especially we're hoping to get feedback, right? And we would like to be really responsive to any feedback we get. Yeah.
I agree with, it also like depends on how often the form is visited. So like with some of these simple to automate forms, it's been a really great learning experience for the teams, but we're kind of getting the feedback that maybe they won't be used that much, and they'll make improvements when we get suggestions, and I think that's great.
And I think that's very much true. And you have to remember the forms we chose for people to work on were ones that were the balance between ease and something the court asked for. So yeah, they're those. That's the nature of those forms. The 209A form is definitely like the cornerstone form of the project. So
one of the things I was thinking about too is, remember we talked a couple of weeks ago about do we do an orientation? Do we not do an orientation? What I was thinking is, since the consensus was kind of like, it seemed to me like we didn't really need it didn't need an orientation and people were able to understand it. Since we're kind of like volunteers and we're not like a contracted party who they're paying to do this, the only thought that I did have is maybe they're going to be less inclined to like give us really blunt feedback or give us constant feedback or detailed feedback, just because we're doing this kind of out of the kindness of our hearts and not being paid for it.
Who do you mean by they there?
You mean the court?
The court.
Yeah, no, we don't expect a lot of feedback from the court.
Right.
I don't think it's because they're going to hold back on giving us criticism.
No.
But because of that, because we might not get a lot of feedback from whomever, I don't know, like, you guys know the people better than I do. Just my thought is, rather than do an orientation, maybe what we do is once we release it, we just solicit from whomever is applicable maybe we just try to solicit feedback more so that we show like we're super anxious in hearing all the details.
I think we should continue. I think we should have another couple focus groups like the one we did before with the advocates. I thought that was really helpful. And I think that's exactly the type of thing we'd like to continue modeling.
Okay.
And don't forget, we've already have lots of gift certificates for real DV survivors.
Yeah, I was going to say that you said you had some survivors who would, and they would be perfect.
Yeah.
To test.
Yeah, because I think we certainly have some things we've raised as issues that my feeling, and Quentin was saying too, is that we don't want to change the interview every time somebody says something. But if we have a few people agreeing, and then particularly survivors, because sometimes our users in like the user testing group are law students, and sometimes you have either advocates or law students or lawyers kind of projecting how they think survivors are going to experience it, and that's not an issue, but something else is. So I think that would be really when we're ready.
Caroline, what's your turnaround time on being able to access those individuals?
I don't know because of COVID, but I am in touch with the DV advocates who organized it, and they were pretty excited, but I've emailed them and said, how come you haven't gotten any feedback back to us?
Yeah, why don't we touch base with them again and keep that alive? Because I would like to bring them in as soon as possible.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to step. My coworker was calling about an emergency 209A.
Yeah,
fancy
of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Sorry.
You are the czar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do people think about 2 weeks? Like in some ways it feels like, wow, that's so far from when we first started when we thought we could get an MVP to people. On the other hand, it feels like that's really soon.
Yeah, it feels very soon. It feels very soon to not disrupt schedules. For example, if I stepped aside to do some allo tests, I could put aside the finishing form I'm doing. Like there are a few things I can put aside, but then I would be putting aside from, kind of the other things we're trying to get done.
Right.
I think we are, because if I'm not doing the 209A stuff, then I'm doing other stuff, right? So it's a branching path. Like it's the choice between doing one and the other.
There is also the potential that if we could get Jonathan to say stuff that you wouldn't have to do allo now.
Yep. And I mean, I could focus on other stuff. I could also make it easier to test. Like,
is this something that we would want to make a priority? Is this something that we, like, if we want to shoot this target, like we put this target out there for 2 weeks, do we want to make this the priority and tell everybody, like, kind of get where you can stop?
I don't want everyone to stop.
Not everybody, but some people, like, that's why I'm saying, like, maybe students could dedicate 2 or 3 hours this week, right? This week and next week to testing or something like that.
I think that,
right?
And we have got hands.
Yeah, I think the criteria we want to say is we don't want to stop the cadence of giving the court some new form every week to approve. So that's a constraint.
Good.
And then the other constraint is we don't want anyone having to pull extra hours than, sort of this nice, comfortable pace is. So the question is, given those two constraints, is it realistic to have it done in 2 weeks? And if the answer is no, and it's 3 weeks, then that's fine. The release is in 3 weeks. We just want to know, is that a good estimate is sort of the question. We're saying, I guess we could reframe it and say, how long do we think it would take to get done if holding those two constraints?
David,
and one answer could be to drop some things from MVP, potentially.
Just
so like one thing that I'm thinking that might be really hard to keep an MVP is review screens. Seems really important, but it also is a whole area that we haven't tested and that's not even written yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it should really hold up people being able to have.
Forgot about review screens.
And also when you're talking about MVP, I mean, it's really important, but I think for MVP, we're talking better than the paper. They get to preview it. So, but that comes back to the question I asked in the beginning. What do they do if they need to correct it? So do they have to go back all the way through to that point in the interview?
That's why review screens are so important.
Yeah.
I think
if
the other
you go back
thing
to
we could
correct
do,
something, it doesn't save most of your answers, and so you have to still refill it out.
That's why
We
the
spoke
review
with
screens.
Valerie last week. That's what it did. So it still takes time, not as much, but it still does take time.
You know, I mean, the
No,
other
it's a
thing
really
is
terrible
talk to
experience for
the-
someone.
Talk to the DV advocates. I mean, you guys have got numbers. You've seen if anybody has completed and submitted these to the court yet, right? Or email. I mean,
There's no emails. We know a couple people maybe have gone through them.
We know
all the
Court
way.
Service Center has used it with actual people.
Okay,
At
so
least
maybe
one.
the thing to do is just double check with people and say, are you finding that you need to correct? And even though it's just advocates, just to run that by first to see are you finding you've needed to make any corrections on the paper form? And it's risky. I'm thinking, what can we do so we can get it out there faster, but that's still safe, you know?
I suspect that most of the corrections, I mean, other than the bugs, right? Most of the corrections that people will do is, I forgot to say something. I didn't mean that. I want to take that back. Or, you know, there are going to be human problems.
Right.
Yeah.
If we can figure out a minimum, almost like an MVP for testing, is what we need to figure out, like a minimum threshold for testing. And I think that is the reason why it's hard for us to decide if this is realistic in the next 2 weeks or not is we're not sure the number of hours that it's going to take for us to do testing. So if we can figure out the minimum,
that's the biggest unknown.
Like the threshold.
I was just thinking something that might speed up the time till we can test, because like the randomized testing, I think is really valuable, other than people don't remember what it is they did. Like, I don't think regular people are going to remember that. What if people used Zoom to videotape themselves or something, use something to videotape themselves while they were doing
that takes so long to go back. It takes so long to go back and watch it.
But you don't have to, if I'm the coder, I'm going to the end, I'm seeing what it looks like, and then I'm going back through the video with that in mind. Like, it's not just watching the whole thing. You don't just watch the video. Right? Or I don't know, Quentin, how does that sound?
Now, when you say people, you're talking about testers.
I'm talking about
Let's back up just a second. Let's just back up just a second, because I think Quentin had another idea before we got down the rabbit hole of review screens.
Okay. Sure.
Well, now I'm actually not sure if I remember exactly what my other idea
You were about to say something else. I could tell.
You're on the spot.
I don't want to divert everybody for me to try to remember it. Let me think though. So
the framing was there are things we could drop from the MVP.
I don't know. Well, I mean, one thing is everyone should look at what I've put in that milestone and see if they agree with it. When I'm envisioning this automated test, what I'm thinking of is we have a filled PDF. We run the test, and it does two things. It tells us if we ran into an error, and it tells us if the output is the same. At least it may not do the checking of the output the same. That can be a manual step. You look at the four things and you compare them and see if there are differences potentially. And it's going to just be a handful of scenarios. Really, I think 4 would capture the most common paths that someone run into a bug. Okay. Oh, maybe one more thing is that we have the option of turning on skip undefined variables, which introduces its own possibilities of errors, but they're safer errors for users where they're not going to lose an hour worth of work. They're going to have some things missing on the form rather than nothing. So maybe that should be something to do this week, is to turn that on. We did some really limited testing with that early on.
Okay. And it may be that a significantly large number of fields, if undefined, the court will not reject the filing because of the nature of what it is somebody's trying to file. That, Kate, I'm just wondering if, if you think that would, oh, you didn't put in the defendant's middle name, sorry, do it over again. I mean, maybe that's a personality at the court thing, but I'm wondering if there's how stringent they're going to be about certain things given the nature of the filing.
Essex Probate and Family is a little crazy. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I mean, I've seen some pretty bad 209A applications.
Yeah.
That get through. I mean, these are done by pro ses all the time.
Exactly. And they're going to be full of we can probably expect that most 209As that are filled by pro ses are not going to be accurate, legible, complete, etc. Right?
Half the time I see them done without like forms that I would consider absolute MVP forms, like, you know, the
Right.
the confidential info forms.
Missing, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I would consider
Right.
those kind of essential.
Right.
So I think, I think this just underlines that we're really at the point where we have an MVP as far as feature sets.
Mhm.
I think it would be nice to have those review screens, but I'm not sure they're MVP. What are people thinking?
So the thing is, then we should probably take them out
Are
and then
they
just
in
say
there
we're going to
now?
not focus on them until we do a release. They're in there,
Yeah.
but only like a third of them are.
And we haven't done any
typical, and
testing on
some of
them.
them. are
But we
just
haven't done much
small.
If
testing
we-
on 9A. Why don't you use the ones you have? I mean, you can have review some things. You don't have to review everything unless there's
'Cause, you
some
know,
indication that you can go and
We
review.
could pick the
'Cause
most
it's one-
important things.
Well,
right?
it's one
The
more
ones
thing
that-
we have to test, guys. It's one more thing we have to test. And if we want
Yeah.
to just hurry up and get to the 2 weeks, like we want to hurry up and get this out, pull them out and let's just put them in the next
I
release
don't-
because all that work's not
basically
going
what I'm wondering.
to be lost.
I think it's going to be huge. If there are review screens that are already there, I think we should include them and include them as part of the testing because the review screens are really important to people being able to fix some mistakes they may have made. And we may not have all the review screens, but some are better than others.
So
That's my opinion.
what's the user experience like with the limited set of review screens? Is it actually a solution, as I think Maeve or someone on this part of my screen suggested, about leaving in just milestone review screens?
Well, we do have the one for the affidavit, like the most important, that people get like several times to check their affidavit is text is correct. So that's, I think, really great that we have that in there, and that's the most important one I think to have.
And that's built in, that's built in, right? Or are you talking
Yeah,
about?
you already have that, and we also all
we
have
wouldn't
a
even
working
take that
review
out.
screen because
Yeah.
it was a very
That's
simple.
part of
review
how
screen.
you write it.
I already
Yeah.
built that
Right,
one
right,
as
right,
well.
right. That's part of the interview flow.
And they can go back out of Flow and change it too, because that's one that I feel really confident. The one that I know, like, I would probably have to spend 5 hours getting right is the children, because it intersects with the affidavit of care and custody quite a bit. And there's some things triggered there that shouldn't be, and it's a little complex how to make that work better.
So I guess the question is, from a user experience standpoint, if we only present a subset of review screens, is that going to be weird?
That's what I'm wondering.
It might
Well,
be weird, but if we decide that there's a particular set of information that people really need to be able to get right, and so we say that's the subset that we provide as review screens, that might be better than nothing. I don't know. I also
It's more, it sounds like it's more things that we're going to have to add.
It will be more
before
things. Yes.
Right.
But
So
the
that's my
question
point.
is,
My
are
point
they
is that we're
worth
trying
it?
to-
Right?
How valuable
The
they are.
question, are they worth it? Like, do we want to take the extra time? Yes, they're going to take extra time on multiple levels.
Review
right?
screens are something that people need when there's a mistake. We recognize some of the mistakes might be forgetting to put something in or typos. So the question is, how likely are those to occur in different areas? It seems like we could maybe keep the review screens for the affidavit, and that's probably the place where people wanted to add something back. So that's probably the majority of, like, you're not going to want to add something to your name. You might have a typo in your name, but you're not going to want to add something in your name. So would it be fair to say that if we kept the affidavit review screen in and we removed the others, that the nature of those others is such that mostly we're talking about people going back and dealing with typos?
Can we just find out which review screens apart from the affidavit,
Sure.
the children and
Which ones are
affidavit
done?
care, what are the other review screens that you have started or have or something already?
Okay, I'll go through it. So we have okay, so these are going to be changed because we changed those sections. So there's like the relationship questions that came up, and the person's name, alias, and so on. We have the affidavit statement. There's one that's for the children that is really broken. So that needs a lot of changes to work better. Probably like 5. Let's see. We have the list of past care custody cases. I think you can add new ones. I think that actually works. I think that's fine. It's more the details of the children that have to be reworked.
And that, remind me how the review screens currently present themselves. Are they on that sidebar as the links?
They are,
Isn't
yeah.
it at the end that you get, or
Well, you get them 2 places, right? You get them two
So in
places,
the
right?
Q&IA, the only place that they exist right now is not very discoverable. It's if you're in desktop and you use those section navigation links. We can put them in a few other places when they're actually working. And one
So let me
is at
ask-
the end on the preview screen, and then on the last screen before they click submit to court.
So let me ask this. I think, like, to your point, David, like, there's one thing about adding things to the affidavit, which we've already got a bunch of checks in there, so we think that that's good. But then what if there's like typos or someone forgot to put something in or whatever? Is there anything to prevent them from like printing the form and then when they see it, like, I don't know, Kate, like, is it a big deal if there's writing with the form that's text, you know? So maybe we can maybe all we do is we could add like a disclaimer at the end that says, you know, feel free to print this, look over it. If there's any typos or anything, like, you can correct them on the form after you've printed it and write it, and then use like a scanning app with your phone to scan it back in and email it to yourself. Or that might be too much, but it's a quicker way to fix this problem than trying to fix the review screens. That's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
I think
Scanning is a big barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even with the scanning app, I think that's.
So yeah.
That's-
Well, we wanted to flatten these. Is that really what we want to do?
Maybe we don't. Although I do think it's really important for us to flatten the preview screens, which I think that was
What
really
do you
good
mean when you
feedback
say
from us.
flatten?
That's good.
Make them not editable.
Yeah. So right now they're fillable
Oh.
PDFs, so you can go in and you can retype on them.
Oh,
I do think it's important that, yeah,
The
the
previews, definitely. That's good feedback.
yeah,
Because you don't want
that's
people
definitely-
thinking they've made changes that they haven't.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there should definitely be a warning for people that if they hit the back button, the
will be lost.
answers, like every time they hit the back
Mhm.
button, the answers after that have all been removed,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't want
Yeah.
someone to get to the end and then be like, oh, I made a mistake on page 2, and then hit back,
Yep.
and then have the whole, you know, all of that.
I have to refill.
So here, if we talk about whether flattening, right? So don't flatten the preview, but if we make the
Do flatten the preview.
Do
So we want
flatten.
people to think they're correcting on the preview.
Do
right?
flatten, right.
Yeah.
But if we make if we make the final, and I've always sort of felt, you know, split on this idea of having them be editable. But if the final PDF is editable, if right now they are emailing the form, I mean, how else are they going to get the form to the court? Emailing them.
I
as an
heard that
It's a good point. The
one
court's
court
form is
making
fillable.
people. I heard
So-
that at least one person is making people physically drop off the documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
What I'm
possible
trying
that court
all
will
I'm
do
saying,
that.
Kate, is what I'm trying to think is the reason not to have them be editable is you don't want them to say, oh, this is the form I filed, when in fact it wasn't the form they filed. But
I
maybe
think-
that isn't really.
I
know.
think the perfect scenario, and this is probably impossible, but I don't understand this technology, is
Impossible.
that the preview would just be editable.
Right.
not-
So
That's
they-
probably impossible.
Yeah.
But then I think
Yeah.
then the next perfect scenario, based on what I think the limitations are, is that the preview is flattened so people can't accidentally think they've made edits. I think that's really important.
Yep.
And then I guess that the final would be editable.
Yeah. Because I mean,
I don't have an issue with people going in and editing
Also-
the final version.
yeah.
And also if the,
when they save it, they have to know that they can't edit it in their browser, because
well,
they
most
can't.
browsers don't allow the form filling feature, right? Or at least mine doesn't.
No, a lot of them do. You fill
A
it
lot
out,
of them
then
do,
you
yeah.
download it, and everything you put in is wrong. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
that seems like, so maybe that's a cover sheet or super instruction.
Instruction.
I guess,
Could it be a question that they have to answer, and that way it actually gets their attention as opposed to just some
Yeah.
text that they scan
Yeah.
over?
A question, you mean like, do you want to
You want
edit
them
this?
to
After they
acknowledge
see
that
the
they can't
preview,
edit it.
do you want to edit this?
Yes, and then if they say they do want to edit it, it gives them instructions on how
Or-
they'll be able to edit
I
it.
see.
well, except that we're thinking people might edit in the review when they notice something's wrong. So they won't know whether or not they want to edit it until they
Well,
look at it.
So
But-
Kate's saying, don't make the preview editable. So look at this.
Yes, no, we're not.
We have
Oh.
an issue for that open already. So that's
Yeah.
that's when I'll,
No,
I'll
but
get
but
to.
my thinking is that people still might not catch the typo until they review their final one. So you don't want to presume they know if they're going to edit it. So I just think
Oh,
it just means changing the question. It's like,
Yeah.
are you aware that if you edit this,
Okay.
You know, you have to save it. And then if we just go back to our touchstone of always compared to what, right now, to the extent the court has electronic versions, they are fillable PDFs.
Right.
So we're basically just getting them to that same point.
Mhm.
So I think
You're
there's,
right. I was saying like, oh no, this is actually way worse than paper, but you're right. No, they're getting PDFs they have that are fillable. So it's actually a lot better than that still.
yeah.
Right,
So
right.
I think we're not
So-
only at
Go ahead.
paper, we're at where the court is, right? So in all the different ways that someone could get this gets them there.
Yeah.
And it
also-
addresses the review issue, the issue that you don't have to go back 500 pages.
Right. And the PDFs that the court provides, maybe that's not true. Yeah, in fact, because some of the PDFs the reason you can't even see them in your browser is because you have to download them. I think the 209A, that's not true. You can preview it. You could fill it out in your browser, save it, and have it be empty. The one the court provides right now.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. We're definitely there.
Okay, so then it sounds like, well, we didn't make any decisions, but it sounds like I'll make a proposal.
Okay.
We can leave in, well, I guess, well, no, I don't want to make a proposal for that. Still a question. Do we think we should leave in the review screens that we're sure in, which is just say the affidavit, and maybe, I don't know, one or two other ones? Does that look weird? Do you think that would look weird to see just those milestones on the desktop? Or can we have grayed out other non-milestone ones?
Well, the interface is such that like you don't know you can edit it until you click on it. So
true.
If people don't even click on those ones, they won't know that they're not implemented.
And most people
we
aren't
wanna
going
add
to
it-
because most
we
people are
wanna-
going to be on their phones.
Yeah, no, people
Yeah.
won't see those. You're right. I mean, we really do want to add them like we've been doing for the other forms where there's the green edit, make changes button.
Yeah.
And then it will only list the ones that are
Yeah, if you just make them non-clickable, then at the end, then they just look like progress markers.
Right, except then they
and
wouldn't
at
be all the
end-
progress because it's only the ones we
Well-
have the review screens for. Or-
Well, you could make them all you could make other progress markers there, right? They just wouldn't be actual review screens. Could you, Quentin? Could you have links there that didn't lead to questions?
Yeah, so the section headings on the left do two things. They're milestones of your progress, and they also act as clickable links if you have a variable that matches that can be a review screen.
So they can't just be one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be, they could.
There probably is a way for us to stop, turn off.
I feel like that would be a confusing UI though, as I think about it. You can click on some things, but not others.
Yeah.
My general feeling,
Great. I can tell you, like, so here's the thing. I think it's probably 10 hours of work to finish the review screen. So that, if that's helpful, that's the, and I think probably 10 hours of my time total. I think probably.
But plus testing, that's the thing.
So that's just for me, right? Yeah, the testing part I can't estimate as well.
My general feeling is, that if we remove review screens, the problem review screens are meant to solve is the same thing that making it a fillable PDF at the end would be meant to solve.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve it as well, but I think a case could be made that an MVP could exclude the review screens if and only if it had the ability to edit the output on the end. And that we could do that, and then that saves us not only the 10 hours of time, but the down cycle of integrating it into testing.
So what if so I'm thinking about the message on the preview screen. So this is what you've said so far.
Yep.
You have two choices. You can sign this form, download it to your computer and change it, or you can go back 400 questions, lose all your data, and start all over again. I mean, not that explicitly.
Yeah.
Eventually,
yeah.
if we say something like that on the preview screen, then people will feel comfortable. The worrying thing is you don't want people to preview it, think it's wrong, get them to and have them feel uncomfortable signing something they already know is wrong. So we tell them if you
you can download the preview, right?
No, we're gonna.
But then it's not fillable, right?
We want to flatten that so that they don't. Yeah.
But they could sign if they're going to print it, then they can sign it.
I don't think that's Caroline's point. I don't think it's about whether it's the preview screen or not. You mean like the final download? Even you're maybe using that same.
Well, I think she's not. Well, let Caroline answer.
Let's let Caroline answer. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll keep saying for you.
We'll argue about what you're thinking.
Yeah, go ahead, go for it. Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is just the instructions on the preview screen. are to say
Okay.
there's 2 ways. If the preview isn't what you want, there's 2 ways to get what you want. Sign it anyway, which means go to the next screen, sign, and then download it to your computer. And then if we say if you want to change it, sign it, download it to your computer, and change it on your computer, already signed, or go back however far you need to, and be aware that you're going to lose your answers. You're going to have to, you're going to have to re-answer a lot of questions.
And it seems like there might be a third option, which is download the preview, print it, sign it, and mail it. Edit, sign, and mail.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
Edit
Was
by
the
hand.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the usability side of that is when people get presented with too many choices, they freeze.
And also the printing one doesn't make much sense because you're gonna call the person. They're gonna say, "I want to see it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of a pain would it be to have them preview it, edit it, and then sign it? I think that's the only part I'm getting hung up
No, I don't
at,
think
is
we can
like,
do
if you
that
have to-
because that's what the
too
review
much.
screens would do if we had the review screens.
Okay.
The problem is that if we have it as a PDF, they take it and they edit it. There's no way for us to then
take it back,
upload
and
those
sign
edits,
it.
and then
Okay.
put the signature back on.
Okay, here's this is idea. If the preview is editable and it's not flattened, you download it, make your changes on the editable PDF. You can upload a file. Oh, you can't sign it if you upload it, right? Is that right?
I think that UI just becomes take this thing, preview, edit it, download it, then upload it to sign it and not send it, right? Because that's what we're gonna do in this iteration. I like your original suggestion of here's the preview. You can go back and basically you're telling them if you made your mistake in the last 2 screens, go ahead and just go back and do it. Otherwise, go forward, sign it, edit it, and then send it.
And I do think that means a warning in three places about going back. One at the very beginning, one if they press the back button, and then one at the end with the preview.
How will the warning appear for the back button?
I'm a little worried about trapping the back button action, being a place that we're going to introduce new bugs rather than helping a real usability issue. But
I think we can do that with an action fairly easily. Just pop up an alert.
So I think one question is,
modal. Okay, whatever. We'll discuss that later. That's fine.
Yeah, that can be discussed later, but also if Kate, you reach out to folks and see how often it's coming up that they have to do the edits, right? That'll give us some empirical information about what it, it only tells us about advocates, but what does the average advocate usually make a mistake? Yeah, this goes back to, this is Caroline's original suggestion. All right, so it sounds like the plan is drop review screens from the MVP, implement the flattening on the preview, but the editing on the download with some messaging around, appropriately to explain what that's meaning. Otherwise, the feature set is pretty much there. And then we can retask some people who have capacity to do testing. And now, if we now take that and put it through the mill, given the constraints of we want to make sure we give at least a form to the court every week, and we don't want people to be killing themselves. Given this new set of constraints, how long do we think it takes?
I'm realizing also I'm out on Thursday and Friday for DACACon.
That's true, DACACon.
Oh yeah.
So maybe we should skip tomorrow's.
Well, what about 2 weeks of time? So the middle of
2 weeks of time, okay.
4th of July.
So 2 days in.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the 4th of July. Let's just make it the 4th of July. Do on the 4th of July.
Make it the 4th. Journey's not doing anything anyway, right?
Super realistic.
Oh, I should point out that the 3rd is officially a holiday. So.
Oh my God.
That day goes away
That's
too.
the Friday, right? This
year. That's the observed.
Well,
this year, yes, Quentin, this year.
Well, the problem is the 4th is a Saturday. So.
Is there a
right,
way
I see.
for us to look at whatever testing forms are already out there, like whatever test scenario, like, is there a way for us to just quickly kind of review the test scenarios, a couple of us for the rest, like today, we can look at the review scenarios and kind of come up with an estimate of like hours that it would take. And then we can try to, because if in the, like today, we can try to figure out if the like 2 weeks is even remotely viable, then I kind of feel like that would be helpful.
So the one, yeah, I think that would be helpful. the one thing I just want to say about why we sort of focus on the 2 week, like it is one thing if we had originally said, okay, the problem with setting the constraints and saying how long is it going to take is just that then it will take some unspecified amount of time.
Of course.
If we do we just want to make sure we have I don't want to say we have a deadline that it's okay to break,
you're
but
right.
it is okay to break.
Target.
It's just that
So,
we want to have
okay.
a target.
So that's
you want
a
a realistic
that's a great
target,
point.
right?
Yeah.
If you would rather us, like if the importance is let's hurry up and get this out in 2 weeks, then then the conversation should be is what are the most important things? What tests do we absolutely have to get done in the next 2 weeks? Like what is the most important thing to focus on? So if that's what we can figure out, and then like let's fit, let's pick the testing then to fit the space. And so that's the list. I guess that I'm looking for.
Question,
what are the lists of
the question there is just, is that testing then sufficient for us to feel comfortable releasing it?
Right. If we get XYZ done, then will we feel good?
Can we also, I don't mean to be tangential about this, but I'm thinking when, we're getting these 2Ls and new volunteers all the time. Does it take too long to get them up to speed and have the first thing they do test the 209A? So we're not taking them off of anything.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Agree.
Yeah.
So that means we get more testing resources.
I'm not sure how many more we have coming in right now, but I did see some people not in Suffolk folks.
We just have to capture them. We have to have a process for getting them on.
Yeah, and Tyler's got a list. Tyler's got a list, and he's kind of already working on that. So
I'm not sure we're actually capturing a lot of them, but
maybe
I'm not familiar with that end of things. Okay, sorry. I won't. I'll try not to. So.
But I think what we need is like some sort of a list rather than we need some sort of like, here, this is what we need you to test, like follow this test plan or follow this whatever.
This seems really useful to write down. And I wonder is it like an abstract question where maybe I'll just start at Google Docs. It seems like the easiest way for us
if you could start writing some scenarios, like a spreadsheet or something.
I've not written any scenarios, so I think learning that process might end up not being as helpful.
Well, we have people on
Haven't you
this
done
call that can do
scenarios already for 209A?
I've done scenarios. It's extremely time consuming.
Right.
No, I'm not saying that you've done more, but I'm saying you've done some already, right?
Yeah, I've done some for individual.
So we don't have to reinvent
forms.
the wheels.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So
I haven't done any for the whole.
Could we not take those your individuals and mix them up? So say you've done 4 scenarios for 4 forms.
So I think this is where the prioritizing comes in.
Yeah.
Because the question is, what time do we want to give which tests? So maybe Quentin can look at some of those scenarios and say,
I don't think that would be like a really good way for me to spend my very limited time.
It's not a Quentin thing.
Maybe what we would want from Quentin is these are the most important, like just give us a bullet list of like test these things. And then what like someone like me could do is then I could turn those into like some testing, not full blown like written out scenarios because that's take too much time, but I could come up with I could kind of create, at least I could put them into like, street form so that anybody could come off and help us test it. You know what I mean?
Are you looking for something like
sorry. Oh, well, I think that is good. Let's drill down from big picture to small. I'm wondering, is there even a bigger picture that might apply across the board to all of our forms, which is like, what are the things that we care about before we release a form into the world? It can't be that it's error free.
I think that's good for stage 2 of the testing.
I think you think we should start with small picture and then go big? I think
big picture. I'm just saying let's not worry so much about what is. I think we'll find the commonalities between the tests. I just don't think we need to worry about that.
Let's just take a minute, if it's okay, just to explore if other people have other thoughts about whether there is a big.
Yeah, let's take a minute.
Narrow down now a little.
What if I play with it the rest of the day today? And I'll have minimum, I'm only gonna have a couple hours because I'm actually flying home today, hopefully. So what if I play around with it? And then if I have questions, I can reach out to Quentin. And then I can try to come up with just some basic, like, here are the things, just based on my test experience already, here are some of the things that I think we should like try to pinpoint. And then maybe like, I can either post that or we could run through it again really quick tomorrow.
So I think there are 2 useful conversations right here. And I want to go back to Quentin's one about giving some space for some broader stuff. Let's just take like And well, actually, let's first check in and see what are people's time commitments. Does anyone have
We're at 2:30 already.
does anyone have a meeting they have to jump off for, or a plane they got to catch?
I just put one for 3. I've got something at 3.
Then
So
can
when
we
I say that,
take 5
yeah,
minutes?
what I'm thinking of when I say big picture is like, well, what are the things? So do we care that if we've gone through the common use case, like we might be able to say, okay, when 80% of the time when someone uses the form, they don't hit a bug that stops them from proceeding, right? That's like a thing that we can say that applies to every form we're working on. That might help us guide which scenarios we feel like we need to test and which ones we don't have to prioritize.
Point being that you wouldn't need to do a scenario where you had a party who was an international someone with whom you had 17 kids and they had a bazooka as a weapon. I don't know what the...
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's some
necessity. That we go
necessity.
backwards and say like, what are the common scenarios? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what are the most common?
But I think that's
don't know if there's
informed
some-
by the 80%. If you're saying 80%, you're effectively saying, what are the common scenarios that capture 80% of users?
Yeah, what should be our heuristic for deciding which scenarios?
Exactly.
I mean, I think we have to consider the safety ones, and I think there's with the 209A, like I would say 99.9% of the time the correct relief boxes need to be checked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like and like I don't know, there's probably more ones that are like I would just like I don't know, something about identifying whatever boxes are the most essential.
Well,
to
exactly.
safety.
So is it impounded or is it not impounded?
Yeah, impoundment's probably essential.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all, it's hard to say what's not, but.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm thinking is I think there's 2 ways to look at this. I think when you're coding, you have to keep going back and fixing things because they're not working the way you expect to. So I think those things could be tested, and actually only the coder knows, not saying you, Quentin, necessarily, but I'm just saying when you're developing, you're like, it didn't work the way I wanted to. This is tricky, and you keep going back. So there are those things. And then I think, as Kate's saying, there's the safety things. And, I think I can probably work with Jody to look at the safety things. And Quentin, I would imagine that the things that you worked on. For example, the relationship, as long as they get a relationship,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if it works or if it doesn't.
One of those boxes needs to be checked or it's going to get ticked. Yeah,
making sure that at least something is like what they check on some of those certain fields that a box correlates. Like remember when I said made me feel harmed and it didn't check the box, that's a showstopper. That's a big deal. We have to test those.
Right. So we're talking explicitly about errors, right? So there are safety errors, and which I think are the class of errors that if someone makes it on the form, there will not be a way to undo it at some later point, right? Like if you misspell someone's name or you do something wrong like that, that's going to be dealt with later down the road. If you forget to impound, or if you can't impound, then that's a genie that doesn't go back into the. So we've got reversible and non-reversible processes, I guess. So maybe a heuristic is for reversible processes, there's one bar. For unreversible processes, there's another bar. I don't know if I'm just thinking out loud.
It's a good.
This is good. This is good. This is a good conversation.
Yeah. I think there's certain things that we need to make sure, and I'm not sure I'm getting this. So the impound thing in a way is reversible. No, it's not, because you won't get a motion to impound.
It kind of is. Like I've actually been in court with a client who forgot to do the impoundment motion and they just let me do it day of at the 10-day hearing. So it's like, but not every court is.
Right,
exactly.
It should be right.
So what I'm trying to say is
you want to risk
stuff that in a way, like you're saying, the relief boxes, you could get to the thing, it's not checked, you download it, you check it. But I think what I'm saying is there's some stuff we want to be sure that they're not going to have to correct on the PDF that they download, because that's an extra step, it's complicated, whatever. So
yeah, I think relief boxes should always be correct.
Right.
It all should always be correct, but relief boxes I think are the most essential.
Because that's what they're asking for. That's the whole point
Yep.
of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Right, and you need to have it correct so you can give notice, and if you don't,
That's if the courts get around to giving notice. No.
Yeah, well, they're not doing that these days, but.
So, no, but I think don't you think that would be the thing, is it's this, we'll do the safety stuff, the stuff that's complicated, and test for those things. And if we can list them, then we should be good.
Yeah, I'm
also
flipping through now.
Especially
with
the non-reversible safety stuff, as David was saying.
I'm seeing a quadrant of reversible, non-reversible, safety, non-safety, and then.
And
I'm
there's
also
the
just
other
thinking like
layer,
how
which is
we've earlier said. Oh, sorry, Quentin.
well, the other layer is just like technical bugs that
Yep.
stop people from being able to proceed.
Yeah,
And
that's
probably
huge.
We never want those.
at
Yeah.
different
But
times
we
as
don't,
well.
that's what I was suggesting.
There's
is
no way to
that-
guarantee it.
No,
Yeah.
but there you think about 80% of the folks go through a certain pipeline. You test that, or a certain path, you test that path. So you've
I mean,
got.
we can get
here's
more
another
than
here's
80%.
another
Yeah, no, I'm
criteria.
just
What
using that
about
because someone said it. Yeah.
what about things that somebody would easily, like, if I'm just a pro se person who has really no legal knowledge and I'm proofreading my form, there's going to be things that might stand out to me like, oh wait, I know that that's wrong because I should, that should be checked. And then there's things that I'm going to be like, I don't have a clue how what I answered
Don't
on the form
understand the form,
translated into the
exactly,
form.
yeah.
Yeah. How I answered it in the interview translated to the form.
Explicit or translated, right?
Exactly. Like things that, if it's something that somebody will easily catch, that's that's out of whack on the form and they can fix it, great. If it's not something they're going to easily catch, then we need to make sure that it's right.
I mean, I don't think we can ever assume anyone's going to catch any errors because the forms are going to be in English and this is going to be done
That's
by
true.
non-English. And we can't translate
Okay.
the forms.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there are also
Yeah.
things like, I think, Kate, one of the things that I'm thinking of is all those questions about, not the affidavit of care specific questions, but the paternity. I think that that's okay most of the time because most of our filers are going to be Massachusetts residents, and if the courts want to know, they can look it up in the court system. And if that shouldn't, I don't think that should be a show. That should be an error. What am I saying? That would be a reversible error. But the thing is, people might not know how, when they see the form, they still may not correct it. But I think that's okay. Obviously, if we see it, we should try and correct it. But it's not something we have to worry about as much. We don't have to test for it as thoroughly. I guess that's what I'm saying. That's not something we have to test for as thoroughly as, like Kate's saying, the relief check boxes. And I do think the motion for impoundment is pretty important.
Yeah, and stuff that's going to get it kicked on I mean, I don't think we have any of those errors, but stuff that's going to get something kicked for not having facial jurisdiction.
Yeah,
but
Yeah, I think that's reversible. The distinction between reversible and non-reversible is the things that stop it from getting in the door, where a person can correct
Make
it.
a motion to amend or.
Yeah.
And that's just, Kate, you're just talking about it's
the relationship and harm. Because I'm worried if one of those boxes aren't checked, a clerk might kick it and say you haven't asserted jurisdiction.
Relief. And then, but you were saying about when you're talking about jurisdiction, you're talking about Superior Court for juvenile.
No, I'm talking about does jurisdiction exist to do just subject matter jurisdiction exist to have a 209A?
So you're not bothered about the probate,
relationships, etc.
Superior Court questions so much.
Not as bothered. I mean,
yeah,
they're important, but
no, I'm just trying to. I misunderstood. I didn't quite understand.
No, just making sure that people are always asserting subject matter jurisdiction.
Gotcha. Okay. Just revealing my lack of law school.
Yeah, it's just the relationships and the harm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I think
Which
we're good
by having one relationship, right? That's the main.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
It's got to have one, at least one, right?
Yeah.
But as far as how that translates into testing, then we got to make sure that basically if they click one, that it shows up.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes for all the checkboxes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is a helpful jurisdiction, the reversible, non-reversible, where it's the thing that would get it kicked out. I think we want to make sure that we highly test all of the non-reversible, potential non-reversible errors. And then after that, then I think it defaults to the most likely path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to do as many paths as is necessary to reach X percentage of people, our estimate of X percentage of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but this is what I'm saying, where you can use Kate's scenarios, because I bet you picked fairly common situations.
I mean, I was just kind of covering on the forms I did, I was just kind of covering every combination.
Yeah.
more or
So
less.
that's,
Yeah.
I think it's worth using. If we're going to do testing, you pick the ones that made sense to you. So we use those.
But I think the big distinctions are the ones that change the logical flow, right?
She
So it's the
she
difference
she
between
made
Exactly.
she didn't pick the
Oh, no,
ones that made sense to her. They're not the most important ones. They're all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
On
I
the
So
was
if we want to
scenarios,
limit the amount of tests we have, then we want to pick a
Yeah.
subset.
Oh, I see.
Of those.
So we just need to pick a subset that hits the main
Right. But
the
those
main sort of
Like,
page
well,
paths.
those
like
exist.
let me give you an example. So like we already identified, right? Relationship is really important. So what I would instruct somebody to do is make sure you test every combination, every scenario possible with relationship, because that's important. Same thing with the harm. Test every combination. So that means you're going to probably do 15 tests, because you're going to test all the different combinations, but don't focus on firearms and other crap like that. Focus on the harm piece for those tests. And then for relationship, same thing. Focus on relationship, but test it like 15 times, all different ways, backwards and forwards. That's what I'm thinking. Is that
That's that would get to the reversible, non-reversible, but then I think you have to have the test with kids, without kids.
Yeah. Right. And the kids not with defendant, kids with defendant, and I'd say the combinations of yes and no for that or whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's actually
I'll
pretty
work with you.
manageable.
Yeah.
Is that all the basic fact patterns you think that we would need to feel?
I think you probably also want to, since weapons becomes one of those potentially non-reversible, do we think weapon? I mean, that's not going to get kicked, but
it's a huge risk, isn't it? A safety.
Yeah, that's
But in terms of arrest,
safety thing, but it doesn't need the kind of rigorous testing, because when you have the hearing, the first hearing, it comes
they're going to
up.
ask. Yeah.
They're going to ask.
They really don't though.
But I think
they don't ask.
Yeah.
It's not important. I mean,
So maybe
the other thing, if you think about it, the police know that when police get killed, 95% of the time it's serving restraining orders or domestic things. So, and lots of times people don't know about the weapon, right? So if the answers don't know, if it's
so I
not
think
answered, we don't even have an I don't know on the form, right?
We just leave it blank in that scenario, I think.
Pardon?
It should be. It should be blank on the form. We shouldn't check the yes or the no.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is,
but we do ask them to say I don't know, right?
Yes, we do ask.
We ask them, but it doesn't show up on the form.
Right, but it doesn't show up on the form.
Yeah, I actually think the defendant information form is fairly important. Like more so than some of the other forms. Having that accurate is fairly important, because there's just been so many problems with service.
Right. But what I'm saying, the
so
weapon.
What fields can we break it down? Because it's a pretty long form. Because it may not be as important, like if they have brown or blue eyes, probably, because someone might not even know.
Yeah.
And I think like most of the issues have been caught. I was gonna say the addresses and like where can I find him questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I think those generally have been caught.
Yeah, those
you could always get regressions though. That's the thing. Like when you change one piece, sometimes you break something else.
So it looks like we've got the reversible, non-reversible, and we've got paths. As far as paths, now it sounds like we're starting to talk about explicit examples, which are children, no children, if children, with one or with the other. And then it also sounds like maybe we're talking weapons or no weapons.
Okay.
I wouldn't push the weapons or no. I'd put weapons or no weapons at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
The children thing, I think.
But I don't think it. So this is an interesting question. This is a one, Quentin, I think for you functionally. If we test children, is it correct to assume that we don't have to do children, no children, we don't have to do all the combinations and permutations of children, no children, with or without defendant, and with or without weapon? We could say on just the no children, do a weapon, do a no weapon, or is there a potential path for that to interact
I don't think they would interact with each other. What I was gonna suggest before is to combine the tests. I think that would be faster. If it's important to have each of those check marks for relationship to be tested, test those as well as the one permutation of children, as well as the request of relief, and test all those three things in one go. And then,
and for you guys though, correcting
and each of those are separate things.
Right. The only problem is the more variables is that going to be harder for you guys as coders to fix problems if we have an issue not knowing where it's coming from, or not really?
I think it is. I mean, I think if we do those tests and we just say always do it without children and no page 2 relief, that's probably the fastest way for the tester. And it's, as you said, Jody, it's easier for us to isolate where the problem is.
Because the too many variables you put in a test, then it's too hard to figure out where the problem is.
The only thing is, you can do everything with no children except the relationship, because one of the relationship is that you have children with the defendant. So that might be one thing you have to do twice, the relationship.
Okay, we could have the children with defendant would be over 18, potentially. So it doesn't trigger, you don't have to list any children on the form, even if you have children with the defendant.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, let's because since we've started to go into the details, let's zoom back out. Do we have the heuristics? Because if we do, we can then make an action item for someone to create the test.
I think I have enough to go try to put something together.
And this will help us triage bugs that we get, right? Because some of the bugs might be ones we say, okay, that's going to have to be post MVP, even if it's an error, do we think? Or is that not the case? Because there's some errors that are not showstoppers.
Yeah.
Might be wrong. They might put, I don't know.
Well, we know the safety errors are showstoppers.
We know those are all showstoppers.
And we know irreversible errors are showstoppers.
And anything Kate kind of mentioned, anything that the court would definitely not accept the form.
Yeah, that's the irreversible.
Right, and those are just those couple basic jurisdiction.
I think the other, if you get any errors where you can't continue taking the interview.
That for sure. Yeah, we'll fix all of those we find, but our goal is to have our scenarios cover. I mean, I'm going to change it from 80% because that sounds really ridiculously low, but maybe 99% is our goal. And we're like, we have enough scenarios to get 99% of the people through without.
80 is kind of, I've worked on projects where it's been at 80%. So that you weren't off. You weren't.
I was just,
Okay, that's good to hear.
The problem is that 80% sounds like a non-legal level, right? Like the importance of that sounds like I'm ordering my food from Grubhub.
Let me give you an example.
Sorry, Caroline?
I didn't hear anything Caroline said. I'm sorry.
Caroline, what are you saying?
I was just talking about 20% with COVID is pretty bad.
Yep.
Sure. Yes, true.
Let me give you an example that might help to make sure that we're thinking about this right. Here's where I did get bit once, and I didn't know this until after the fact. We were trying to do a release, and we tested the top 80% of our most common products, but we didn't check it how often those were ordered and how often they were ordered with other things. So say somebody ordered one of the top 80%, but then they also ordered a top 20% or the 20%, it would hold up the entire order. So
20%.
That really ended up biting us because I didn't know that was the criteria. I heard 80% and I was like, oh, we'll be fine, but I didn't know the details of it.
So to translate, that's something like, let's say that we determined that almost everyone did it with children, but we didn't think that anyone did weapons. So we didn't test weapons, but it turns out that when you do it with children, you also always do weapons. Even though it's not the top line.
Yeah. Some kind of combination that would be common. Yeah. Well, one other question, is there any other technical issue besides wrong information on the form and being able to get to the download screen? Anything that else falls in a type of bug that we're concerned about? I mean,
certain forms don't trigger when they should.
Yeah, so you get an incomplete pack.
Yeah.
Okay, so incomplete package.
I don't know.
Which sounds like a subset of improper data completion, right?
Yeah.
I would say Mac versus PC, Chrome versus Safari versus Fire, whatever. I would say all the different browsers, but I think we've already done that.
We can't control that anyway.
But maybe mobile.
Want to test for the most common.
Mobile. We should definitely. I think that's the thing is
mobile
testing on.
If we did all the tests on mobile, we'd probably be okay, because that will be the scenario with most.
That's what we've been trying to emphasize.
First sounds good.
I think that's based largely on the stats that Caroline presented us with, saying that the diagnostics or whatever you guys get. What's it called? Yeah. Analytics. Thank you.
Also,
is primarily mobile. Sorry, David?
Oh, no, and that's explicitly our use case, right? The idea is, what if you could do everything on your phone, right?
Right.
That's who we're trying to reach, those people who don't have a
So we-
desktop, those people who
Okay,
don't.
so we do
I
want
wonder
to,
if there's something about signatures. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
I think
Whether
that comes to data completion, right? Like
I was just thinking what can go wrong.
Well, like there's
That's why I'm just
email,
throwing
I
signatures
guess.
out
is
because I know
another-
it's important. Signatures are important. So what are the things that can go wrong with signatures? Like you don't get a signature screen, or
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what that is, but I would include that in. I would think that would be a technical thing, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the other kind of things I was thinking about, like our menu options working and email kind of stuff that happens external to the interview working, technical level.
So is it-
emailing the form once it's done? Once you
Yeah,
you
we definitely
able
want to, since we don't have an ability for people to send it to the court, we want to make sure that they can download it or email it to themselves.
Right.
So that's
Yeah, so those are technical things you want to make sure that you can do. And
um,
also those can be combined. That should be able, that you can test with other things you've tested because you've gotten to the, you know what I mean? You've gotten to the, you see the preview, you sign
Right.
it. And you can see, when you get to the final, you can see the final, right?
yeah, that's how you, that's
So the
effectively
question is,
downloading it.
can you download it? Can you email it? Right? And so that's a thing that you can test with actually all of the other tests. As
Right.
long-
right?
We did have like this artifact with our first testing where we got like a lot of errors about the downloading, but it turned out to not have anything to do with the actual correctness of the form. But so something to be aware of, that we could have other things like that. We didn't, that one we know about, I think now. It won't
So
happen again.
is it part of the MVP though, that this can be done on a phone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'd want to make sure we test it on an iPhone and an Android. We don't have to test every variation of Android, but just generally speaking, we want to test it on an iPhone and an Android.
So I've got a question about that, which is, have we resolved the thing about the jittery on the older iPhones? It's a little bit jittery, or you can't scroll down. Have we resolved that issue? I mean, is it
think
something?
it's due to a nav bar issue that I'm looking at David.
Oh, is that, you think that's that?
I
I'll
think
look at
it's
that.
related to that too.
If it's related to that, I'll look at that.
I think it's all, so there are a few things that I think I haven't seen in other interviews, DocSimple interviews, that I think are probably just because we changed the nav bar height.
We should
It's
just
a
restore
few
it to
testing
default.
things it requires.
I just wanted to raise that because I think that's pretty important for people who have primitive whatever.
I'm not sure we could replicate. I think it would be nice to be able to figure out how to replicate that issue, though.
I've got an extra iPhone I can send somebody.
Oh, no, the thing
There's
is,
another reason we want to change.
I've got an
right,
old small iPhone. So it's
But it was
done.
happening on my. How old are you guys? Mine's a 7, and it was happening on
Mine's
mine.
Yeah, we just need to figure out what criteria trigger the issue so that we can replicate it, so we can make sure that we get rid of it.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I was
or
saying.
is it
MVP? Is this MVP? And do
that's
we,
what, so that
Well, the
that's
question
what
is
I
if
was
it
just gonna
comes up
ask.
during our test, if the scenarios that we think are there and otherwise trigger it, then it becomes something we need to worry about.
Or
but
is it
we need the right phone to see. That's the thing. To test it, you need the right phone.
Yeah.
or we could just put something on there that says, if you're doing this on your phone, you know, you may have issues with an iPhone 7 or earlier.
Yes, I don't
or
think
not.
I think what we need to do is we need to just make sure that the testing, so if Maeve said it happens on her phone, I mean, I don't think the point is we need to figure out how to replicate it so that we can test it. And I think we should test on a phone that is of the type where we think the issue shows up, such that if it shows up, then it's clearly something, I mean, we're gonna try to fix it anyway, but first we need to know,
Michelle gets it, I get it, and Maeve says she's seen it.
yeah, so we need to
I
know
reported it as well.
but we need to know what set of steps makes it happen.
Right.
And then
What
we will see
screens
if
it
those
happens on.
set of steps, if they occur in this interview, then yeah, definitely it's something we need to deal with.
Okay.
So do
I mean,
we
I
have
think we're gonna
an
deal with it anyway,
established, do
but-
we have an established like minimum requirement that we want to make for MVP? Like it must, like we should establish like it must work on an iPhone 7 or newer, or it must work on like we need to figure that out, because otherwise then we don't need to test it, right? Like if we don't care about iPhone 6s, then nobody tests with an iPhone 6. But if we care about iPhone 7, then we need to test with iPhone 7.
I'm gonna do.
What's the bar? Where do we care?
I'm gonna look right now on our I mean, all I can do is Mass Legal Help. We could ask the courts, but I'm just
They
gonna
don't know.
look at my analytics to see because it'll break down to device and whatever. I think it'll
iOS version, maybe even. Or,
We have 5 minutes just until someone needs to go at 3
I
or
have to go.
something.
I need
Okay.
a snack.
I added
it's probably a
another
good place for us to stop.
I think so. I think we're
another
good.
safety thing to test would be making sure all the children's names end up where they should be on the
Okay.
in the relief sections, including with addenda. Because if a kid's name doesn't appear, then it's not
Oh,
then that kid's not going to be on the order.
Not going to be protected.
So making sure that's probably the most essential addenda. If there's more than 6 kids,
Which it's the addenda for what now? What's the official?
kids' names.
The names
If-
on all the places that they're supposed to appear. You
Yeah,
said
so that
with-
would be complaint page 2. If people are requesting no contact or custody of kids, I think
Okay.
that's really essential that those names
All the kids
appear.
appear.
And if it's more than 6 kids, that the addenda triggers.
Okay.
And that the Skipper might help with because it fills in a lot of the basic information for them. Not Skipper, Jesus Christ, the filler. So I think Jody's gonna try and assess some of, like, write down some of those paths for the tests that for the
Yeah.
criteria that we've described. And Quentin, do you think you would be able to write down the paths that an allo test could handle?
So I think once we've gotten these, we should choose a reasonable subset, and then I would want an allo test that could just doesn't need to do everything. It will get through that garden
And it
path,
will-
get to the
and-
end, and won't have an error. That's what I would be using the allo test for. Is that there's
Okay,
no,
so it doesn't need, you don't need to see the PDF from it. It can be in headless mode.
I would like to see the PDF at the end if it's possible, because then I
So
could
I think if
compare
you run it
catch both types of
in a
errors,
headful,
but-
if you run it in a headful mode, you'll be able to see, it'll open up a browser. So you'll be
Okay.
able to see the
So-
PDF.
I wonder if there's a way for
Okay.
us to email
I'll
the
get
PDF
like
too.
a proposed, based on kind of just a
I
summary
think
of
Allo
everything we
can do
talked
that.
about.
Yeah.
I'll kind of get a
If
list
not,
put
Puppeteer
together
can do it.
Okay.
by, like, you'll have it by tomorrow morning when you wake up at the latest.
Whoa.
I-
So 6 a.m.
I
South
need a
African
way
time.
to replicate that error with the jittery thing. You know what steps.
Let me pick
on
up that
what
issue.
interview.
I'm gonna pick up that issue that I reported, David, and I'll send
Yeah.
that to you.
Perfect.
Which had the steps in it.
And I think-
Jody, I
yeah.
think specifically Aubrey, Matt Millwood, and Blake Rigdon are available for assistance. They have hands to help us with this
Like
testing.
now,
Yeah, I think they're going to do the affidavit of care, just the typos and stuff. Quentin, if you haven't already.
No, they could do that this afternoon.
Oh, I
and then,
sent the
Oh,
link
okay.
And then
to send the
yeah, and then the
chat.
next thing is, and then tomorrow morning, once you've gone through that, then we can move on to the next stuff. But I know
okay,
that they
so
will be
Aubrey,
available. And I
Blake,
think
and who is the other one?
Matt Millward.
Caroline, did you find the phone stats?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at them. So it only went down to 7, and most of them are iPhones. But I mean, like 53,000 in the last week were iPhones.
So what?
But
Mhm.
But then it went iPhone 7, iPhone XS, and those were like 2,000, 3,000. So this iPhone is just like a collective number.
Oh,
But so now
Okay.
I'm looking at iOS, and it's just for the last week. And I'm just trying to figure out I'm assuming that some older phones can only take up to a certain iOS. So I'm just wondering what the cutoff should be. But we have people down to 9.3.5 iOS.
And
So
what-
Wow.
it jumps from, oh wait, it's not in the right order. So in the last,
Can you do percentages instead of numbers? Instead of,
okay. Can we really quick talk about, so I'm going to get a list. I'll try to do as much as I can in the next like 2 hours. I just don't know. I'll get something so that we can get some people this afternoon if they have time to be able to do some scenarios. And then maybe, do you want me to reach out to Blake and Aubrey and Matt
Just message
and get
me,
them
and I'll do
started?
it.
Just
Message me, and I'll do it.
Okay.
And then
All right.
Quentin, sorry, quick question, Quentin. The best way for people to report these issues and typos is to fill out a bug report thing, so it becomes an issue on GitHub.
Actually, no, because this package doesn't live in that same GitHub. So
Just on the
that's
thread.
something yeah, the thread is fine. Yeah, I'll use that.
209A doesn't?
No, you're talking about the affidavit
This
of
is
care.
a different, she's talking about the affidavit.
Oh, okay.
All right, it seems to me like we've started talking in a way that we seem like maybe 2 weeks is a possibility. So that is
2
a
weeks
target.
plus the DACA and the 4th of July.
Right.
Right?
Two business weeks.
3 days.
4th of July, woohoo!
2 business weeks. So 10
Okay,
business
let's
days.
do
July
it.
2nd.
Let's make it work. Let's make
Oh,
it
next
work.
week
What
is
days are
already
we
the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd be
Jody's
like
favorite
looking
holiday,
at July 8th maybe. Would be
Yeah.
our
Business days.
Or July.
or the 9th maybe even really, let's say, or 10th.
Yeah.
All
If
right.
we make it the 10th, then that's the
Or
that's
just the 2nd. You know, why not just the 2nd? Next Thursday.
Okay.
Let's just
Try
get
for
it done.
that's really only a week and a half.
Let's just get it
Yeah,
done.
Jodes. The 6th.
I do like it, Jody. I like where you're at because this is something originally we're like we're gonna finish it in 3 weeks, and that passed a long time ago.
And I'll be
So-
honest with you. I think once we get some people started and going, we'll be able to gauge how it's like the time frame and
Right.
and worst case, again, to your point, David, if it's really important for us, then like maybe we do pull more people off and put them, maybe not everybody, but we just
Right,
pick,
just
let's
pull
pick
more.
the one,
Or to my other point, if we miss it, it's not the end of the world.
or
It's a
pick the
target.
one form that we're going to do for this week and pick the one form we're going to do for next week, keep those people on those 2 forms, and then let's take everybody
that's
else.
entirely appropriate. I think it's care and custody and motion to vacate the marital home.
And then financial statement.
Yeah.
So
People want
whatever
that
people are
financial
not
statement,
working
not
on,
just me.
maybe did you capture those 2 forms? Because I didn't.
Those are on our list.
Those are just the ones we already have.
in
Okay.
Trello.
Those
Thing
aren't
in
ones
Display
that teams
Index.
are working on. That's just outside of the teams.
It's Quentin and Kate.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. That's right.
Is the financial statement nearly done?
The financial
Yeah, actually-
statement is done except for testing.
Oh, wow.
Except the financial statement isn't on the court website.
Right.
So that doesn't get to count as one of the things we give the court. So,
I think
know,
it,
but the
no, I
problem
think it was actually listed as a,
wait,
when the court
never-
requested the motion form, I think that was listed as like a
the
part of.
form, but not mentioned elsewhere form.
Yeah, I think it was maybe included. I think you could justify that.
So are
Okay,
you saying that
let's
we
go for
already
it.
have 2 forms ready for this week and next week?
Well, we
Yeah.
think they'll be, yeah.
I think that the motion to vacate marital home is like we have some more things to add to it. I think like that one we can do the review screen pretty quickly, so we should do that one.
Care and custody, we almost sent, except then we noticed typos, and we're like, oh, let's have other people look at this.
Which one was
Right.
that?
Care and
Care and
custody.
custody.
Oh,
So we're
So
putting
then
that's
we
what
could do
that's
something
what
like,
Matt, sorry.
no. I was just thinking like
Caroline,
tomorrow
don't you
maybe
have a
during the-
meeting?
I do, but it's Rochelle.
maybe tomorrow during the stand up.
I said about 3:15, 3 o'clock. So yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Shall I hop off? You guys you'll let me know. I mean, I know what I have to do, right?
Okay.
Okay. You can let me know if there's something I don't know. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So maybe tomorrow during the stand up, we could put it out there to people like, this is a goal that we discussed. We want to try as hard as we can to get this done in the next 2 weeks. We don't have to give them the exact date. We can just say 2 weeks. And then if there are any people, if you guys are at a good stopping point where it's not going to mess you up to come back to this in 2 weeks, get to a good stopping point. And if you want to jump over and help, we can offer it 2 ways. Either it'd be great, like push it, jump off this and jump over here to 209A testing, or we can just offer it like, if you would like to be part of the 209A testing to help us, then, you can hop over and help us test.
I think we can be a little more directed than that. You can just say,
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
Or
stick,
direct. Just
the
tell
thing is-
people to come over.
yeah, I know where people
Okay.
are on
Yeah,
the
exactly.
on their
Make notes.
forms. So
Okay.
it could be, I can easily figure out, because then also what will happen is that we all get them to the same spot as well. So maybe it's just a case of like logistically figuring out who would be better on this. I know that Mia and Vinny have gotten very far with their thing. So I know that they will be big assets on this. Aubrey, Matt, and Blake, they have a blocker. So they have time that they can spend on this. Yeah, so it's easy. I can
Yeah, there
figure
are
that
people
out.
with
I think they just
capacity, let's
assign.
build their capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, really quick clarifier. 5 kids, no addendum. 6 kids triggers the addendum.
7
No,
kids triggers the
6
addendum.
7
6
kids.
kids fits
triggers.
on, 7 triggers the addendum.
Okay.
The skipper has 8 in case you wanted to have one without the defendant as a parent as a test, but I can switch it to 7 if you'd like.
Okay, it
No,
sounds,
it's fine.
The filler. Okay.
do we all have things to do?
Yes.
Yes, and just to be
I don't
clear,
know what my thing to do is, but
one more thing I
I'll
will
figure
do
out.
is I'm going to change the PDF so it uses the skip undefined option, and I will put that commit in today. And then that will be when I've done that, that will be the time to start doing tests, because that could totally change things. And I guess if it does that, then we'll have to consider pulling that back. But I think that
If you get that done in the next 2 hours, hour and a half, I can probably help you shoot through and test that really quick if you want.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do it right now after we finish this call.
And Michelle had said she wasn't sure what she was doing next. Is my reading correct that maybe the thing to do is to wait for Jody's scenarios and then those go to you, Michelle, and you can do something with them, either in putting them into the filler or I'm not sure. What's next for Michelle?
is there anything useful I can do? If not, I'll keep working on the stuff I was working on.
Here's what I have. I've got safety errors versus non-safety, the irreversible things, which are the things that would cause the court to not accept, easily translatable versus non-translatable. I think we kind of kicked that one out, so I don't think we need that one. The defendant information form, and then the path, like with kids, make sure there's at least 7 kids over 18, kids living with defendant, kids not living with defendant. Check to make sure the names appear in all places without kids, and then we can do the weapons. I think we said we would do the weapons without kids because it's just faster. Am I missing anything? Because if not, I'll just type these up super fast and get them out to everybody.
Yeah, but then I guess the question is what is there something special Michelle should be working on? I mean, I guess there's the potential of the allo testing, but we're going to reach out to Jonathan first.
So I've done that, and he said not till after DACACon. So that means if we want it July 2nd, then we probably should.
Well, Michelle,
maybe we don't. Maybe that's not realistic. I think, Michelle, you have a lot to do already, so I think that it might.
It depends what's priorities. It depends what priorities are.
We don't want to, again, the constraints are we don't want to hold up other existing things. So if what you're working on is helping.
Stuff like the finishing carpentry on the motion to modify, I'm going to need some help anyway. So so I don't know if that'll be doable at the same time as this anyway.
Yeah, I think that might be a 3-week out form, so that might be okay to put aside.
Yeah, like that's the main thing I've been focusing on the last few days. So
and you said you needed SME review on that too?
Yeah.
Do you want to just send me the link and I can look through it?
Sure. Yeah.
If that's easier.
Sure.
I do.
I don't know if it's ready but yeah, we can do quick. I don't know if you want it when it's more ready, but.
Oh, either way, whatever you think.
Okay.
One thing about this form is it's going to absorb whatever time we throw at it. We can always make it better. It's so complex. There's so many branches and permutations, and it's so much for a pro se person to do on their own. We can always make it better. So I do think it's going to be really helpful for us to just have a deadline. We don't want to make it. On the other hand, because it can absorb whatever time we put at it and the resources we give it. So if we can get out a few more forms that won't be as crazy, like that's important to do too, because maybe we just.
I thought we had the 2 forms that we wanted already, but.
I think we do.
So.
It's more general comment. I think it.
Okay,
I think,
got it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right. This is one of those. This has been a marathon. It's one of those ones where it went through the trough of like, oh no, and then it's I feel like at a better place at the end. So great job, everybody.
Can we talk about why Jonathan Pyle responded to my question on the weekend and then left the channel? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was weird.
I was like, was it something I said?
So I invited him to the channel just to answer Caroline and
right.
Yeah, so I think he might have been like, oh, I'm on this channel, and not realized he wasn't trying to answer DACA questions on that channel generally.
Right. Okay, so it wasn't me. I was like, maybe
No,
he
it's
thinks
not
it
because
was
of you.
so dumb.
No, definitely not. That is a much more specific question than a lot of the questions he answers on the DACA Symbol channel, which people should feel free to use, I think, because you might, I don't know if we should even encourage more of the students to use that, because they'll get fast responses from Jonathan all times of night.
Yeah,
it's probably not a bad idea for, you know, when they want to move on into their DACA Symbol Lives post-project to have that connection.
I think doing it now would be great, because then they'll feel that they have some
that's my
support in doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, my point is they can build that relationship now.
Okay, cool.
Use it post-project.
Okay. Is there anything else anyone needs before we end the call?
So are we, this is this the 4th? The 4th is next week. So the 3rd is a holiday next week, so we don't have Friday next week.
Should we just do it Thursday instead? Should we do Casual Friday on Thursday?
So there's an interesting question about Casual
party.
Friday this week, because this week it's DACACon. So you know, Quentin will be gone, and maybe some other folks. I encourage folks.
I'm also on DACACon.
So I don't know if Wednesday becomes Casual Wednesday, or we just skip a week. Might just skip.
Yeah.
Skip.
But DACACon, I'm actually free of it. We have our normal stand-up on. We have normal stand-up on. Yeah, I'm free then, so I can host those.
Quentin, you were going to bring up Teaching Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Should we skip Teaching Tuesday this week, or should we just make it only for blockers? Put out a call. Think of things that you're stuck on.
Blockers thing, I like
more
that.
time to answer.
And office hours, almost.
Office hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to get Lance to push on some of the stuff that he was trying to fix over the weekend, but he's been very busy. So I think maybe we'll be able to take advantage of that. So maybe Quentin, or do you want me to put out a call on the thing saying that Teaching Tuesday will be office hours?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. That'd be great. I was about to do that, but yeah, if you will, that would be great too.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, and I think those are very helpful. And as I said, you know, especially if they're recorded, it saves a lot of time because we can go and search those.
Emily with overflow fields. That was a thing.
Emma.
Is that Emma? Is that still a thing that is on the priority list or not?
It sounds like a good, we didn't put it on our error list, but it's another thing. We have an issue for it open. I put it in the milestone for MVP release. So that's the thing we're going to also do, is go through that milestone and try to finish all of those things that we can.
Okay.
And if we run into the end of our time and we haven't finished them, we might have to decide if those hold it up or if we just keep going.
So is that something I should try and tackle, or because Jody or something said something about doing that instead, but now you're kind of booked? I'm just gonna go through and have her look at them and list them. That was, or maybe it was Kate, I don't remember.
Look at what and list what?
The fields that overflow.
Oh, yeah.
Taken care of.
Well, and that's what I was thinking too. I feel like I do want to create a form, like just a quick spreadsheet like template, so that people can, as they're filling out the form, they can keep track of what answers they're putting in, and they can use, with the exception of the few variables that we want them to test, they could use the same stuff every time, just so that it's easier for them and they're not having to re-update that test template, the sheet every time. But I think they need a sheet because they need to be able to remember what they picked. It's too long of a form to remember every single thing.
You're right. That's a great idea. Great point.
I mean, could we don't want to print the variables? I mean, they could just open up the source and see all the variables and save that, right? Or, I mean, that's a little bit messy. That's a little bit messy.
No, you got to, like the first couple times I filled it out, I just like wrote on a scratch piece of paper like what I picked for the things that I knew were going to be hard for me to remember, because the first time I went through it and I got to the end, I was like, well, shoot, I don't even remember what I picked on the, did I pick? Because remember, like those checkboxes didn't show up under the harm. And I was like, well, crap, I think I picked the make me feel scared. And so then I did it all over again to make sure that that's what I picked. So I think we want to be able to have something that they can log, but we also don't want them to have to fill that out every single time because it does slow you down. But it's better to have it so that when you get to the end, you're not like, oh crap, it's kind of a wasted test because I don't remember what I picked, so now I got to go back and do it all over again. So it's kind of.
Should we just have the same scenario for every option? Make everyone uses the same variables for everything other than the things we're explicitly asking them to test. Is that an answer?
I
Or
think
should
that
each
is
people have
still
their
the
own
plan.
set?
I think that was always the plan, right? Everybody just uses the same names and stuff. With the filler, I can print out. With the filler, I can print out the values there. But like we can just say, you know. But that's more work setting up the tests. That's true.
But if we decide, if we can say that we want to use all the standard names and everything except for the variables, then I think the filler is the way to go. And if you can give us a list of like what the filler information is, then I think that could make it a lot faster.
Sure.
If we're going to use the same names every time.
Yeah, I think the same.
But is there any risk at doing that? Is there?
We don't need to test the different characters that show up. We just need to test that the right characters show up. That's all.
And do we still, I know we're so late. Do we still want to go through and do a test of like testing the character limits? And because my action item for that is I was going to get with Emma, I think, and figure out what are the most important ones, and then we wouldn't worry about other ones. Like what are the most important ones that need an addenda if the information can't fit in the thing? Mm-hmm. Is that something now that we want to say is not as important and we don't want to worry about that?
Well, I mean, the two you mentioned are really good examples of ones that, yeah, the form changed. So then I should just take out those options to add extra information. There used to be more room for those. I'm going to make those issues and put them in the post, in the MVP release, because those are easy fixes. That doesn't handle the things we haven't already spotted, though, of course.
If it is a big deal, what I can do is I can do a test where I like pick yes for everything that you can pick yes for. And then I can just type like the letter A as many times and see how long it'll let me go. I could do a test like that if we still
remember when you and I did it and I said, you know, incident 1 start, incident 1 end. That can be very useful for that kind of thing.
But I think if we're going to count characters for the smaller fields, it'll help just to be able to count. Like I can use W or something because that's one of the biggest characters.
W or M are biggest characters. E is more average, is more of an average with everything. Just depends how you want to do it.
Okay.
What was the other one you said? Eye color and hair.
It was eye color, hair, and then name the people that I want to share this confidential information with.
Okay, I'll open up that too.
I did put something in GitHub for that.
And I think our heuristic of reversible applies to that too. So eye colors maybe not the big deal, but the who do you want to list is the big deal. So.
That's a good point. Oh yeah, you did open that one. Just as we're on the call, I see it now. Great. I'll put that on this milestone.
So you're going to do the Emma discussion. Is that what I'm understanding? Do you have time to do
I don't even think we need an Emma discussion at this point. Is that what I'm hearing? Or do you still want me to follow up with Emma?
Well, I mean, we did a first pass to come up with which things got addenda, where we had a few people weigh in.
You know what?
But I don't think it hurts to have another one.
I was just going to say, it probably wouldn't hurt to talk to her and just kind of give her an idea. These are the things that we're thinking are the most important. Are we, you know, is there anything that you think we're missing?
I'm also trying to think of if there's a good list. There was on a weird Trello card, I put it in the wrong place. There's a list I came up with, I think is still the one we're using for which things got addenda.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. Otherwise, I'm not sure the best way to figure out which things go onto the addenda right now.
Okay, is Emma in Slack? Like, can I look her up? Is there a way for me to look her up, or how do I get her?
She's on the Slack, but I doubt she would be responsive to it unless you emailed her.
Okay. Yeah, that was the thing that I think that
email on Slack.
Yeah, it's the right at the bottom of the PM's email thing. A PM's message, sorry. If you just look at the PM's channel, it's right at the bottom there.
Sweet. ehollis@NLA. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Now the
Kate.
world knows.
Thank you, Kate.
Spammer.
I didn't say the whole thing. I didn't say the whole thing.
Jody, if you don't have time for her as well, if you just connect me with her, I can also have that
Well,
discussion.
I'm thinking in terms of priority, I'm thinking what I'll do in terms of the order. I'll get some basic scenarios thrown together, get some people starting with testing, then I'll go have the conversation with Emma like tomorrow or the next day.
Sure.
Is that okay? That's just what I'm
Sounds
thinking in
good.
terms of the priority. Like the
That
quicker we can
ordering
get people
seems right.
starting to test today. And then what is the magical link that we want everybody to be testing with? Because we want to make sure they're using the right link.
Right.
If my filler branch gets merged, then it should be the filler link, and that will stay. If it gets merged into master, then it will stay updated with whatever package is there. So I can make
I think
that
for
pull
people that have
request.
not done the my thought is for people that have not done anything with the 209A yet, let them walk through it and do it themselves the first couple times. And then by like the third or fourth time, then they can use the filler because they're more familiar with it. I think if we have them use the filler off the very, from the very beginning,
they'll have to
gonna be
switch links.
Yeah,
That's
that'll be 2 links.
confusing.
So I think that's can be dealt with in the Slack. Make sure we get
Yes.
the links. All right, I'm conscious of everyone's time, and also realize I forgot to eat lunch.
Okay. You ate. You had spaghetti.
Oh, that's not true. I did eat lunch. I'm just
I'm
hungry,
not
I
got food
guess.
diary. Why
guess I'm
do I
hungry, I
know
guess.
that?
I
You
thought
worked
I
up an
forgot. It was
appetite.
so unremarkable.
Okay. We'll get on Slack and we will keep in touch. I'm having
Just
a
like to
testing
point-
call tomorrow morning at 8 with the team, so hopefully everyone will be up on speed with that and ready to kind of relocate if they need to, or not relocate.
Reprioritize.
You're having a
reprioritize.
what call at 8 with the team, Maeve?
Testing the new people who are going to be testing to
Oh,
do test
good.
case
Okay.
templates. But otherwise, I know that there's certain people that have blockers or who are just waiting on stuff to be done and can help. So yeah, if we need people to call on, just ask.
Cool. And I'm just going to point back to my inspiring ending from earlier when we didn't end. Good work, everybody.
Good work, everyone.
See you guys later.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.